아시아제 최초의 통합 본자전 XNote 인텔 센트리노의 파워 곰TV 스타 인비테이셔널 그 두 번째 날이 밝았습니다. 너무나 뜨거웠던 어제의 열기를 오늘도 이어가도록 하겠습니다. 안녕하십니까? 저는 캐스터 이현주입니다. 네, 그리고 오늘 도움 말씀 주실 두 분의 해설 소개하겠습니다. 최정원 해설 그리고 안준영 해설입니다. 어서 오십시오.
네, 안녕하세요.
네, 안녕하십니까?
안녕하세요.
네, 오랜만에 우리 스포츠 팬들께 인사를 드리는 저로서는 오늘 이 자리가 무척 감개무량한 자리가 되겠습니다. 워낙에 또 이 메가톤급 선수들이 모인 또 하루 6경기가 치루어지는 이 중요한 자리에서 또 진행을 맡게 돼서 개인적으로도 무척 기분이 좋습니다.
네, 그렇습니다. 저도 이곳에서 현장에서 직접 중계를 하고 스튜디오 안에서 중계를 하는 것도 아니고 이거 현장에서 중계를 하고 있고 또 워낙 16명의 선수들이 최고의 정상급 선수들만 포진해 있는 상태이기 때문에 많은 긴장이 되고 있고
네.
앞으로도 좋은 중계 열심히 노력하겠습니다.
네, 안준영 해설도 오늘 자리 어떻습니까?
네, 이 곰TV 스타 인비테이셔널 모든 조가 다 기대가 되겠지만 그 중에서도 뭔가 새로운 무언가 하나를 원하는 팬들에게는 바로 오늘 이 비조의 경기가 가장 제격이라고 생각하고요.
그렇죠.
그런 비조와 함께 시작을 해서
네.
더더욱더 저도 설레이고 긴장이 많이 되네요.
자, 이 스포츠 역사상 최초로 시도되는 통합 본자전입니다. 연간 통합 본자전. 대회 의미에 맞게 어제 경기 역시 치열했습니다. 재경기까지 가는 이 혈전 끝에 2명의 8강 진출자가 가려졌는데요. 자, 죽음의 조라고 불리우는 A조. 이유가 있었죠. 3명의 우승자 출신의 선수들이 있었는데 말이죠.
그렇습니다. 사실 이제 죽음의 조라는 그런 표현이 어느 정도는 식상하다라고 생각이 될 정도로 잘하는 선수들이 많이 생겼고 특히 이번 곰TV 스타 인비테이셔널에는 그런 선수들만 뽑아서 조를 편성을 했기 때문에 모든 조가 그렇지만 어제 같은 경우는 기존에 우승했던 우승자 출신 3명에다가 어린 괴물 이용호 선수가 포진이 되어 있었습니다. 그래서
예.
이용호 선수의 그런 최근의 기세를 봤을 때 그래도 우승자 3명은 조금 힘들지 않느냐라는 그런 많은 우려가 있었는데 그런 우려를 한 방에 불식시키고 3승으로 일찌감치 재경기 없이 이용호 선수는 8강에 선착을 하고 있는 그런 상태입니다.
네, 한편 2승으로 2위로 올라간 오영정 선수는 그 바로 전날 그랜드 파이널 경기가 있어서 많은 사람들이 좀 힘들지 않을까
그랬었죠.
이런 우려를
그렇죠.
했습니다.
예.
예. 그런데 막상 뚜껑을 열어보니 본 경기에서는 상대적으로 준비가 모자란 모습을 보였지만 기본기로 승부하는 재경기까지 가서는 역시 오영정이다 소리 나오는 경기력을 보여주면서 2승으로 재경기에서 깔끔하게 진출했습니다.
네, 어제 2월 17일 날 있었던 A조 경기 결과 보고 계십니다. 이영호 선수가 3승으로 조 1위 8강 진출, 그리고 오영종 선수가 조 2위로 8강에 진출했다는 소식을 먼저 전해드리면서 자, 이제 오늘 그 B조 경기 들어가기 앞서서 잠시 말씀을 드리면 엑스노트 인텔 센트리노의 파워 곰TV 스타 인비테이셔널 20일까지 이곳 신노린 테크노마트 곰TV 특설 무대에서 생방송으로 저녁 6시에 함께 하실 수 있겠습니다. 근데 오실 때마다 빅매치가 기다리고 있는 것은 물론이거니와 푸짐한 경품까지 기다리고 있는데요. 이 소식이 아주 즐거운 소식이 아닐 수가 없겠습니다.
예.
16강부터 4강까지는 식사권을 증정합니다. 데이트 코스로도 상당히 좋다라는 생각을 지울 수가 없고 또 이 8강과 4강에는 욕심이 날만한 경품입니다. 닌텐도 DS가 10대 추첨을 통해서 여러분들께 지급이 되니까 기대하시고 8강과 4강 노리고 오시길 바라겠습니다. 또 이 곰TV 스타 인비테이셔널 홈페이지로 들어가시면요 다양한 또 우리 곰TV 스타 인비테이셔널의 정보를 얻으실 수가 있죠.
그렇습니다. 저희가 실시간으로 바로바로 볼 수가 있기 때문에 여러분들이 새로운 인터랙티브한 그런 플레이를 볼 수가 있고 또 최근에 인기 투표까지 또 하고 있지 않습니까?
네, 인기 투표 이거 활발한 참여 부탁드리겠습니다. 자, 그리고 또 해외 송출이 계속되고 있는 스타 인비테이셔널 이 곰TV만의 이 특징으로 자리매김하고 있는데요. 전 세계인들이 이 스포츠를 한 자리에 같은 순간 즐길 수 있다는 이 장점, 해외에서의 반응이 아주 뜨겁다고 하죠.
네, 경기 시작 전에 외국인 해설자인 닉 씨와 잠시 대화를 나눠봤는데 반응이 어떠냐라고 물어보니까 정말 기대하지 못할 정도로 아주 폭발적이다 이런 대답을 하더군요.
그렇죠. 지금 모습 보이고 있네요. 니콜라스 프랏 어제 9경기, 제 경기 포함해서 9경기를 나홀로 중계를 했습니다.
저희 같은 경우 3명이서 이제 중계를 하고 있는데 큰 박수 나오네요. 혼자서 9경기를 중계했기 때문에 굉장히 체력이 많이 소진돼 있을 거라고 생각이 되는데 오늘도 역시 변화없는 모습이에요.
힘들지 않았느냐라고 물었더니 전혀 힘들지 않았다. 일단 경기에 몰입을 하면 나에게는 그것이 자양강장제다 이런 말을 했는데 오늘도 역시 빅매치가 기다리고 있으니 닉 힘내시기 바라겠습니다. 자, 그럼 신노린 테크노마트의 곰TV 특설무대에서 펼쳐지게 되는 이 곰TV 스타 인비테이셔널 오늘 16강 B조의 경기 시작해보도록 하겠습니다.
네.
오래 기다리셨습니다. 4명의 선수를 보면은 이재동, 이윤열, 박영민 그리고 임요환 선수로 구성되어 있는 이 B조 경기 들어가기 앞서서 잠깐 이 그룹에 대한 구성을 살펴보도록 할까요?
예, 글쎄요. B조만 놓고 보면은 당연히 이제 어느 대회에서나 4강급 그리고 우승자급 선수들인데 최근에 가장 기량이 좋고 많은 경기를 소화하고 있는 저그의 신예 이재동 선수.
네.
이 선수 같은 경우는 상대 종족 가리지 않고 최근에 높은 승률을 보여주고 있습니다.
그렇죠.
그리고 역시 박영민 선수, 프로토스 송병구 선수나 김태경 선수와 마찬가지로 최근 프로토스의 주축이 되고 있는 그런 선수고요. 이윤열, 임요한 선수는 현재 스타크래프트 e스포츠로 이만큼 발전해왔고 지금까지 스타크래프트가 여러분들께 사랑을 받고 있는데 한 획을 담당한 감히 현재 A조에서 이미 3승으로 진출한 이영호 선수에게 이 두 선수가 없었다면 이영호 선수가 나오지 않을 거라고 판단이
그렇죠.
될 법한 이윤열, 임요한 선수가 B조에 합류를 하고 있습니다.
이 비조의 그림을 언뜻 보더라도 이 스포츠 팬들이면 누구나 생각할 수 있는 것.
그렇죠.
역대 본자 대 차세대 본자의 대결 구도. 이렇게 볼 수 있나요?
그렇죠. 예. 이재동 선수와 박영민 선수 각각 개인 리그와 프로리그에서 이재동 선수도 프로리그에서 물론 잘하고요. 둘 다 뛰어난 모습을 보이고 있는 선수고 이윤열 선수와 임요한 선수는 각각 최고의 커리어를 보이고 있는 선수. 네 명 다 무게로 견주어본다면 누구 하나가 빠지지 않는다라고 말씀드릴 수 있는데 좀 구체적으로 들어가 보면 사실 오늘 좀 위기에 놓인 선수는 이윤열 선수입니다.
이유가 있나요?
일단 4명 중에서 자신이 상대 전적에 앞서는 선수가 아직 한 명도 없어요. 임요한 선수와는 비공식 경기를 포함하면 동률까지는 기록하고 있고요.
그렇죠.
남은 선수에게 모두 밀리고 게다가 저그에게 좀 할만한 블루스톰에서 이재동과 프로토스에게 할만한 카트리나에서 박영민과 맞서 상대하게 됐고 테란 좀 해보려고 하는 백마고지 맵에서는 하필이면 또 테란 대 테란 임요한 선수가 마크를 했단 말이죠.
그렇죠.
그래서 이렇게 힘든 상황을 어떻게 또 이윤열 선수가 잘 헤쳐나갈지 그게 또 매우 기대가 됩니다.
분명 또 이런 관전 포인트를 집어주시는 이유가 있을 것입니다. 이윤열 선수가 이렇게 불리하다라고 일컬어지는 맵에서 경기를 펼침에도 불구하고 그를 어떻게 극복해 나가는지 또 이 대처 방법을 어떻게 들고 나왔는지 이윤열 이기에 또 믿는다는 말씀이신 것 같네요. 자, 그러면 본격적으로 첫 번째 경기부터 시작해보도록 하겠습니다. 이보다 더 화려할 순 없습니다. 엑소노트 인터 센티넬 파워 곰TV 스타 인비테이셔널 16강 비조의 경기 그 첫 번째 주인공부터 만나보시죠.
이재동
선수입니다. 이재동!
현재 최근 저그의 마지막 정말 진화가 아니냐 하는 말을 들을 정도로 굉장한 실력을 보여주고 있고요. 이재동 선수. 오늘 첫 경기 B조 시드 배정자입니다.
네, 현재 본좌에 가장 근접한 선수라는데 아무도 의견이 없을 거라고 생각하고요. 그렇지만 최근에 약간 약점을 공략해가는 모습을 보였습니다. 그것을 충분히 극복해서 나와서 다시 한번 이 대회를 우승함으로써 본좌를 정점을 찍겠다라는 그런 목표가 있을 것 같아요.
예, 최근 10경기 전적이 6승 4패인데 8승 2패에서 최근에 요 며칠 일주일 안에 이제 2패를 안타깝게 당했었거든요.
네.
그렇기 때문에 6승 4패인데 최근 10경기가 1월 30일부터 2월 16일까지라는 걸 봐서 굉장히 단기간에 많은 경기를 소화했다. 그만큼 경기력이 높다라고 판단을 할 수가 있습니다.
이재동 하면 떠오르는 것이 바로 뮤탈리스크 일정도로 뮤탈리스크로 재앙을 불러온 이재동 선수. 그러나 최근 베테랑전 2패가 마음에 좀 걸립니다. 자, 나라 이윤열 선수입니다.
이윤열 선수입니다. 사실 맵에 대한 불리함 그리고 상대 종족에 대한 상대 전적에 대한 불리함 이런 것들이 여태 프로게이머로 활동을 하면서 없었을 리가 없습니다. 수많은 역경이 있었습니다만 그걸 이겨냈기 때문에 현재 이윤열이 아직까지 있는 거 아니겠습니까? 그러니까 이윤열입니다.
그렇죠. 못 이겨냈으면 지금 나오고 있는 저런 입장 절대 불가능했죠. 저것이 이윤열이 걸어온 길을 증명하고 있는 거예요.
네, 최근 10경기 전적 역시 6승 4패 그리고 최초로 골드마우스를 현재 획득하고 있는 이윤열 선수입니다. 정말 살아있는 전설이라고 볼 수가 있겠습니다.
네, 진행형 선수의 살아있는 전설이라고 불리는 이윤열 선수와 현 본자라고 한다면 나는 이재동을 꼽는다 하시는 분들 굉장히 많은데요. 자, 이 매치 무게감이 실리지 않을 수가 없습니다. 둘이 경기를 펼치면 누가 이길까 궁금해하시는 분들 정말 많죠. 자, 이 첫 번째 전장 블루스톰에서 경기를 펼친 두 선수의 상대 전적을 한번 살펴볼까요?
자, 이재동 대 이윤열 현재 A매치로 보면 상대 전적이 2대1로 이재동 선수가 앞서고 있습니다만 사실 2대1이라는 수치는 그렇게 큰 수치는 아닙니다. 한 경기만 더 이겼을 뿐이라는 것이고 경기 포인트는 이재동 선수가 최근에 말씀드렸다시피 테란에게 똑같은 전략으로 2패를 했다는 것 이거 그리고 지금 현재 상대가 그런 노련함을 앞서고 있는 이윤열 선수라는 것이 이재동 선수에게 극복 과제라고 볼 수가 있습니다.
네. 자, 이재동 선수와 이윤열 선수의 경기 준비가 모두 끝이 났습니다. 엑스노트 인텔 센티넬 파워 곰TV 스타 인비테이셔널 16강 비조 그 첫 번째 경기 이재동 선수와 이윤열 선수와 이재동 선수의 경기를 시작하죠. 자, 전장 블루스톰입니다.
네.
한시에 위치한 이재동 선수의 적은 보라색입니다. 네, 7시에 위치한 이윤열 선수의 테란입니다.
네, 앞서 최정원 해설께서 말씀해 주셨던 이재동 선수의 최근 테란전 2패. 그것은 바로 더블 이후에 베럭스를 잔뜩 늘려서 썬큰을 뚫고 들어오는 타이밍, 그 타이밍을 이재동 선수가 못 뺏어서 그렇거든요.
네.
근데 이 블루스톰이라는 맵은 그런 플레이하기에 테란에게 그렇게까지 적합화된 맵은 아닙니다. 왜냐하면 아마랑 썬큰을 뚫고 들어오기 위해서 가깝고 넓은 동선이 필요한데요.
네. 네, 독서실에 있는 것이죠. 네, 집에는.
네, 좀
예.
짱이신 듯해요. 네.
네. 자, 그러니까 이재동 선수의 그 주요 관전 포인트라고 한다면은
예.
최근 믿기 어려운 테란전 2패인데
그렇죠.
그것이 이 맵에서는 그다지 이제 뭐 통용 가능성이 높지 않다 이런 말씀을 주셨어요.
예, 그런데 뭐 꼭 그렇지도 않은 것이 사실 블루스톰도 앞마당을 많이 가져가고 이제 플레이를 펼치는데 이재동 선수의 그 뮤탈리스크가 뜨면은 테란 입장에서는 굉장히 막기 어렵고 그 이후에 이재동 선수가 하이브로 넘어가고 럴커로 시간을 걸면서 하이브로 넘어가고 무난한 경기 운영을 펼쳐주는데 그런 것들을 막기 위해서 테란이 들고 온 카드가 초반에 이재동이 뮤탈리스크가 뜨기 전에
네.
제압을 하자 이런 것들이거든요.
그렇죠.
그리고 앞마당을 먹고 배럭을 잔뜩 늘린 상태에서 공격이 비록 실패한다 할지라도 테란 입장에서 그다지 큰 타격이 없다. 이런 점에서 굉장히 안정적이라고 볼 수가 있죠.
네, 천재 이윤열을
네.
응원하시는 우리 팬 여러분이요.
네.
이제 최근 테란과 저그에서 초위, 대세라고 하는 그런 빌드를 따지고 보자면 테란은 방금 이제 계속 언급한 그 오베럭 빌드 그거고요. 저그는 초회 처리 상태에서 올리 뮤탈 리스크 그거 모으는 빌드가 요새 대세입니다. 네, 그게 특히나 이 블루스톰 같이 앞마당을 타격하기 좋은 뮤탈리스크로 타격하기 좋은 맵에서는 엄청나게 힘이 강력하게 실려요. 그래서
그렇죠.
이윤열
네.
선수가 그것에 대한 해법으로 또 뭘 들고 나왔는지 굉장히 궁금합니다.
이재동 선수는 역시 앞마당을 무난히 가져가면서 이제 아직은 가스를 건설하고 있지 않죠.
네, 오늘 그 16강 B조의 경기 순서를 보면 어제 A조의 경기 순서와 플레이하는 선수는 다릅니다만 종족도 같고
예.
맵 순서가 같습니다. 해서 어느 정도 좀 이렇게 비교를 좀 해가면서 보면은 아주 재미있을 것도 같아요.
그랬었죠. 어제 이제 1경기가 마지오 선수와 이용호 선수의 경기였었는데
예.
마지오 선수가 좀 유리한 상황에서 약간은 방심을 중간에 하지 않았나 싶은 생각이 들어서 결국 이제 역전패를 당했었는데 마지오 선수가 어제 많이 집중력이 떨어지고 경기력이 약간 떨어지는 모습을 보여줬습니다.
네, 그 정도 상황까지 갔는데
네.
이재동 선수가 질 것 같다. 이런 생각은 저는 사실
그렇죠. 마지오 선수의 그런 유리한 상황을 이재동 선수가 똑같이 유지할 수 있다면은 이재동 선수의 기량이라면은 이길 수 있다. 뭐 이런 생각도 들긴 하네요.
워낙에 그
예.
실력이라는 것이 종이현장 차이다라고 본다면은 방심이라는 것은
그렇죠. 마지오 선수도
가장 큰 적이다.
사실 방심을 했기 때문이지. 예.
예.
SCV가 계속 정찰을 통해서 상대방 체제를 이미 이윤열 선수가 확인을 했습니다. 확인을
네.
했고 역시 이윤열 선수가 앞마당을 가져가면서 비슷한 빌드로 이재동 선수가 많이 최근 두 경기 패배한 그런 비슷한 빌드로 이윤열 선수가 가지 않을까 하는 생각이 드는데요.
네, 자 이윤열 선수 정찰 끝낸 SCB
네.
밖으로 나오고 있고요. 자 이윤열 선수 원배럭
근데 지금
더블.
이재동 선수가 저글링이 좀 많이
여덟 개?
생산을 해서 아래쪽으로 달리고 있거든요.
예.
이윤열 선수 이거 이대로는 SCB가 빨리 나가서 그렇죠 막아줘야죠. 마린만으로는 현재 막을 수 없는 그런 상황입니다.
네.
예, 조금
네.
SCB 나오기 좀
베럭스
늦어
늘리고 있는
보이긴
상황입니다.
해요.
약간 더 나와야 되지 않을까 생각이 드는데요.
이윤열 지나쳐
더 나와야 됩니다.
빨리
잡히세요.
이거는 머리 살리기 정말 힘들겠네요.
예.
자 이러면 더블을 하고 있는데요.
예. 자, 일단 이재동 선수 안쪽으로 들어가서 더 잡는 거는 약간은 지금 더 잡나요?
자
더 잡기보다는 앞마당.
머리나기 또
예.
잡힙니다.
야, 글쎄 앞마당 센터를 만든 SCV를 타격을 하는 게 좀 더 낫지 않을까 하는 생각이 드는데요.
결국은 또 한기까지 마지막 잡아내네요.
네.
네, 요즘 저그 선수들의 공격성이라면 이 정도 이득 봤으면 저글링 계속 뽑아서 몰아붙일 수도 있습니다.
자 한번 볼까요?
근데 드론이
자 여기서
저그 입장에서가 그 많은 팬분들이 많은 스타크래프트를 즐기시는 분들이 그런 말을 많이 하죠. 저글링으로 한번 찔러봤는데 잘 됐다. 결과가 좋다. 왜 이후에 저글링을 계속 생산하지 않느냐. 그것은 저그의 생산 건물의 해처리의 특징 때문입니다. 저그 해처리는 초반에 일꾼과 병력을 같이 만들어야 되거든요.
네.
그렇기 때문에 이득을 볼 것 같으면 드론을 찍는 게 보통 저그 유저들의 선택이 되죠.
그러니까 드론이 될지 저글링이 될지는
예.
모르겠는데 그 순간 이제 판단.
그렇죠, 예. 왜냐면은 그 라바는 이미 저글링이 뛸 때 찍혀 있었기 때문에.
그렇습니다.
예, 그 뒤에 저글링이 이득을 볼지 안 볼지 모르는 상황이기 때문에 드론이 현재
네.
나오고 있는 그런 상황이죠.
자, 꽤나 많은 수의 머리를 잡아낸 상황입니다.
예.
이재동 선수가 이 저글링이 끝이 아님을 잘 알고 있단
예.
말이죠.
게다가 마지막으로 한 개 남은 저글링이 굉장히 오래 살아남았기
그렇죠.
때문에
네.
많은 정보를 가져갔고 따라서 이재동 선수 지금 썬큰의 개수라거나 뭐 드론 르닝 타이밍하거나 이런 거 비교적 굉장히 정확하게 잴 수 있습니다.
자, 레어 완성이 되었고요.
자, 이재동 선수
자, 이제
스파이어.
곧 2단계 텍트리가 올라갈 상황인데, 자, 아직까지 모습은
예.
보이고 있지 않습니다.
네, 지금 상황은 중요한데요.
네.
스파이어를 아마
올라가겠죠?
챔버나 스파이어를 짓지 않을까 생각이
네, 지금
듭니다.
이윤열이
그러네요.
메딕
아무것도
붙이지
짓지 않고.
메딕 붙이지 않은 상황에서 엇박자로 나왔거든요. 이거 이재동이 예측 못했습니다. 아직까지.
예,
자,
상대방이
이쪽에-
저글링이 계속 오지 않는다. 그리고 가스가 늦었다. 발업이 늦었기 때문에 저글링이 계속 안 온 거거든요.
네, 그렇죠.
그렇기 때문에 한번 찔러주러 가는 것 같습니다. 스파이어
네,
뒤쪽에
스파이어
있네요.
이제 찾았습니다.
예, 그거 있긴 있겠죠.
그렇죠. 당연히 있을 건데,
전대미문의 빌드죠. 레어까지 만들고 아무것도 짓지 않았다면은.
그 상황에서 클코로니가 올라갔다는
예,
거. 예.
저글링 드랍은 아닐 테고요.
네. 자, 잠시. 예, 상당히, 재밌네요. 자, 이제 스피드업된 저글링들, 이렇게 잘 뛰노는 저글링들, 이 초반에 또 저글링으로 이득을 본 상황 이후에 이재동이기 때문에, 이재동, 페이스 잡으면은 절대 놓치지 않는 이재동 선수 아니겠습니까?
예.
이러면 반대로 이윤열 선수의 심리에 대해서 우리가 또, 확인을 해봐야 되겠어요.
네, 현재
예측을.
이윤열 선수가 뭐 이렇게 3배럭에서 더 늘리지 않고 엔지니어링 메이, 아카데미는 뭐 진작에 지어진 상태고 엔지니어링 메이를 늘리고 있는데
네.
무난한 출발입니다. 테란 입장에서는 앞마당을 똑같이 저그가 먹은 상태고 그리고 초반에 약간의 마린을 잃긴 했습니다만 심각한 타격은 아니거든요.
네.
이렇게 되면 마린 메딕 꾸준히 모아서 자신의 뭐 사정거리 업그레이드 정도 됐을 때 중앙 쪽으로 일단 한번 나가는 그런 플레이를 펼칠 수가 있겠습니다.
네, 지금 화면이 정확하게 잡히지
네.
않아서 잘 모르겠는데 아까 저글링이 들어온 걸 막은 이후에
네.
이윤열 선수가 일꾼 조절을 약간 한 것 같습니다. 예, 병력이 죽었기 때문에 일단 당장 취급한 건 머린이다라고 생각해서 머린 충원을 지금 평소 타이밍보다 굉장히 빠르게 했어요.
지금 이재동 선수가 저글링도 상당수 많이 났고 발업이 된 상태에서 뮤탈리스크 지금 라바를 모으고 한 번에 띄울 거거든요. 이렇게
네.
되면은 이윤열 선수가 중앙 쪽을 선점을 해서 상대방 저그의 제2가스 멀티를 공격을 하는 플레이를 하기가 어렵습니다. 왜냐하면
그렇죠.
저글링과 뮤탈리스크의 동시에 첫 번째 공격에 마린 메딕이 순식간에 사라지게 되면 본진 뮤탈 게릴라에 많이 위험에 노출될 수가 있거든요.
네, 이 블루스톰,
네.
뮤탈 견제,
앞쪽으로 들어오는데요. 앞쪽으로 들어오는데요. 이윤열 선수 뒤쪽으로 이건 벙커 지어야 되는데요. 예.
이거 견제가 아니고 그냥
한 번에 들어온다. 뚫립니다. 이윤열 선수.
근데 이윤열이
맞았어요. 뒤쪽에 있네요.
컨트롤이 좋았습니다. 컨트롤.
잘 먹었습니다.
예, 메딕이 살짝 비벼주면서 저글링이 상당수 놀았거든요.
네. 예, 다수의 저글링을 이런 식으로 정면 뚫기에 초반에
네.
이용을 하는 이재동 선수였고요.
이게 가운데로 마린 메딕이 나왔을 때 조금이라도 진영이 흐트러져 있으면은 초반 저글링과 뮤탈리스크에 분명히 잡아먹히는 그런 타이밍이 있습니다. 그리고 많은 저그 유저들이 투해 처리 뮤탈을 할 때 그런 타이밍으로 많이 이제 병력을 손실시키고 정면을 뚫는 플레이를 많이 했었거든요.
네.
예, 지금은 그런데 이윤열 선수가 잘 막아내면서
자, 그리고 다시 쪽 이재동 선수 멀티 시도하고 있습니다.
네, 보통 가장 안전한 타이밍이라고 생각되는 저그의 제2멀티는 뮤탈리스크가 거의 나온과 동시에 지어져야 됩니다. 그런데
그렇죠.
그걸 포기하면서까지 저글링을 뽑았는데 이득을 못 본 상황. 이거는
네.
이윤열 쪽으로 살짝 손을 들어주는 그런 상황이에요.
네, 조금씩 그랬습니다.
네.
그것은 아주 얇은
예, 지금 미사일 터렛이라든지 마린 위치가 뮤탈리스크의 행동을 굉장히 제약하고 있습니다.
이재동 선수 컨트롤.
네, 이거는 싸워주는 거 아니죠? 이건 머리 뺐어야 되는 상황이에요.
네.
못 나가네요, 이윤열 선수. 불안불안한
단독
상황.
행동을 하는 머리는
네.
가차없죠.
단독 행동도 아니고 뭐 한 5, 6 정도까지는 메딕이 없다면 거의 현재는 아무것도 하지 못하고 잡히는 그런 이재동 선수의 뮤탈리스크고요.
뭉쳐야 사는
네.
그런 세상입니다. 자,
챔버를 보통 최근에 저그들이 이제 선챔버 빌드를 많이 사용을 하는데 방위력을 빨리 눌러주면서 공격을 하는데 지금은 챔버가 약간은 뮤탈리스크에 더 비중을 두고 있는 그런 이재동 선수예요. 초반에 뚫으려고 생각을 했었어요.
머리 배치 좋았죠, 지금? 지금 이재동 선수는 계속 저글링을 추가적으로 생산해주면서 빈집 한번 노려보겠다라는 생각에 의도도 어느 정도 있습니다.
예.
윤열 선수 너무 무리하게 나가려고 시도 많이 할 필요 없어 보여요, 지금.
자, 이제 러커로 이제 전환을 시도하고 있는 이재동 선수입니다.
멀티 봤네요. 방금 이윤열 선수가 스캔으로 멀티를 확인한 상태인데
네, 지금.
예, 근데 마린 메딕이 마땅히 나가서 저 멀티를 순식간에 파괴하기가 쉽지가 않은 상황이거든요.
네, 이윤열 조급할 필요 지금 전혀 없거든요. 저
네.
멀티 생각보다 굉장히 늦게 돌아간 겁니다.
네, 스캔을 통해서 멀티 타이밍이 좀 늦었다는 것은 확인을 했죠.
예. 그렇다면, 이 정도 규모로 나가는 건 제가 보기
이거
좋지 않습니다.
잡힐 것 같은데요. 저글링이 받고 뮤탈리스크와 동시에 오면은 마린 메딕 한번 잡을 수 있는 타이밍이 나올 것 같은데요. 다시
네.
들어가는데요, 윤열. 럴커.
러커.
네, 럴커가 나왔을 때 마중을 나간다는 의미는 나쁘지 않습니다만, 마중을 나갔다가 다 잃어버리면 그거는 정말.
병력이 이거는 마중 나갈 병력이 아니고 잡힐 수 있는 저글링 발업 저글링이 없는 것도 아니고 현재 뮤탈리스크와 발업 저글링이 같이 있다면은 중앙 쪽에서 이 병력이 잡히고 그리고 중앙 쪽을 저그에게 선점 당하고 제2가스
자, 덮칩니다.
덮칩니다. 여기 어렵거든요.
자, 자, 러커부터.
예. 보통 럴커를 마중 나가서 잡아야 되는 이유가 상대방 진영이 전체적으로 앞쪽으로 앞당겨주면 테란이 나가기 힘들기 때문에 가운데서 선점을 해놓은 상태에서 뒤로 빼면서 럴커 숫자를 하나씩 줄여주는 플레이를 테란이 많이 하거든요.
네.
야, 근데
예.
정말 이례적인 모습입니다. 이재동 선수가 지금 기세에서 살짝 밀려 보여요. 방금 충분히 싸먹을 수 있는 병력이었는데.
네, 이쪽 병력 달렸거든요. 예, 그렇죠. 중앙 병력 한번 빈집 터나요, 이제도.
자,
중앙 병력, 중앙
예.
병력 한번 잡을 수 있는데요. 이재동 선수 한번 잡는 게 낫지 않을까 싶거든요. 지금은.
예, 이윤열이
예.
최악의 시나리오는 각계격파고 최고의 시나리오는 쌈싸먹기입니다. 지금 머리 양쪽에서 덮치면 러커도 별 힘을 못 쓰거든요.
그러나는 이재동 선수입니다.
이윤열 센터 병력 돌아와야죠. 뭐 하나요, 저 병력은?
자, 사이언스 베스 한 개 나와 있는 상황, 이윤열 선수. 자, 센터 쪽에서의 병력은 아직 머물러 있는 상태고요.
예, 아니 이쪽은 차라리 벙커를 짓고 빈집을 대비를 하면서 중앙 쪽에 나가 있는 병력은 상대방 이재동 선수의 제2가스 멀티를 별똥부대처럼 빠르게 움직여서 파괴할 수 있는 그런 것도 충분히 가능하거든요, 이윤열 선수가. 근데 추가 병력을 현재 끊고 있는 목적으로
네.
중앙 쪽에 마린메딕이 배치가 되어 있네요.
그러니까 이재동 선수의 그 추가 병력은 이제 아래쪽으로
예.
돌아서 만난다거나 아니면 이 센터에서 반드시 이 병력을
예.
거쳐야 되게 됐네요.
예, 그러려면 조금 더 아래쪽에 배치했어야 되는데 조금 애매합니다. 일단
예.
이윤열 선수의 움직임이.
자, 이윤열 선수 진출 9시 쪽.
이대로
선수
이윤열
앞마당 쪽으로.
선수의 모든 병력들이 합쳐지게 된다면은 중앙 쪽을 점령 나가고 그리고 뭐 드랍십이라든지 추가로 마린메딕 별똥부대에 의해서 제2가스 멀티가 이재동 선수 위험할 수 있는 그런 상황이거든요.
이재동 선수는 이 병력 보이기 전에 무조건 싸먹었어야 되는데 지금
네.
일보 직전이에요.
자, 할보 올리고 있는 상황에 이재동 선수, 그 상황에 이윤열 선수 센터 진출 시도를 합니다. 밖에 나와 있는 이재동 선수의 병력들을 몰이하고 있는 이윤열 선수.
예, 자 그런데 저그 입장에서는
디파일러 마운드.
이렇게 잘 도망 다니면서 병력이 계속 쌓이면서 디파일러가 나오면은 테란의 병력이 모인 것을 순식간에 몰아낼 수가 있는 그런 타이밍이 나오죠. 적어도.
네, 물론 지금 이재동 선수가 시간 끌고 있는 움직임은
예.
매우 좋습니다. 하지만 그래도 이득 볼 수 있을 때 싸울 수 있을 때 싸워주는 게 좀 더 낫다는 생각을 하면
예.
네.
저 센터병은 저거는 좀 잡아 먹었으면 좋겠는데요.
예, 이제 이윤열 선수도 모아서 한 번에 하나씩 순회 공연으로 지금 깨겠다라는 생각을 하고 있는 것 같습니다.
자, 센터로 집결을 하고 있죠.
네,
네,
이
모여요.
지금, 저 병력들은
모이고
지금
있죠. 근데
예.
이때 노리네요.
양
이제도.
선수 모두 모입니다. 이윤열
예.
선수가 지금 먼저 모였습니다. 자, 중앙 쪽에 탱크 자리 잡고, 그렇죠, 탱크 자리 잡죠.
잘 잡고 있는 전투인데요.
네.
위쪽에서 내려오는 병력 많지 않은 이재동 선수고요.
전부가 이렇게 되면은 두 양쪽에 있는 병력을 합칠 수가 없는 상황이고
네.
테라는 마린메딕 한 부대 정도만 왔다 갔다 하면서 베슬로 럴커 잡아주면서 멀티 깰 수 있는 그런 지금 상황이 됐습니다.
뮤탈리스크를 적극적으로 활용을 해서 뭐
네.
견제의 최고 그걸 달렸다 이러는 것도 아니고 지금 현재는 운영의 묘가
예.
좀 빛나야 되는 그런
네,
상황이었습니다.
그런데 이재동 선수도 뭐 나쁘지 않습니다. 현재 이제 디파일러가 곧 개발이 되는데 훨씬 개발이 되면은 충분히 몰아낼 수 있고요.
네.
베슬 잘 조심해야 되죠.
베슬까지 잘해야 되겠습니다.
이재동 지금 병력이 3방향에 있습니다.
예.
이 의도는 퇴로를 차단해서 병력 뒤로 불리는 게 아니고 한 방에 다 먹겠다는 소리예요, 이거.
예, 디파일러 나올
한
때까지
번에.
버티는 거죠, 이재동. 마린 업그레이드 어떻게 되나요, 지금?
자, 유닛 업그레이드를 확인해봐야 되겠습니다.
예,
1, 2럽입니다.
업그레이드요.
예. 1, 2럽. 오!
와,
일단
이레이트
나오자마자
타이밍
잡혔습니다.
칼 같은데요? 정말
네.
좋았죠, 이번에.
자, 그리고 추가
여기서.
병력을 끊고 있는 이재동 선수. 이런
네,
부분은
요제 럭커 바로 자, 이재동 다크스터 뿌리면서 접근입니다.
탱크는
탱크.
대부분 제압 당할 것 같고
네.
이윤열 선수의 추가 병력이 오지 못한다는 입장에서는 이윤열 선수가 중앙
그래요.
선수에서 이윤열 하지만 럭커 많아요.
이재동! 확인할 수 없었습니다만
네.
요소의 럭커 버로를 해놓으면서 길목 차단에 성공을 하고 있어요.
이윤열 선수 이거 병력 움직이기가 상당히 껄끄럽게 됐는데요.
그러네요.
추가 보급 병력이 움직이는 길목마다 럴커들이 박혀있고
네.
디파일러가 곳곳에 있기 때문에 배슬이 현재 많이 쌓이지 않은 이윤열 선수 입장에서는 디파일러를 제거하기가 굉장히 어렵게 됐습니다.
네, 병력 분산을 지금 즐겨 쓰고 있는 두 선수에게 테마는 시종일관 이겁니다. 먼저 합류하느냐, 각계격파 당하느냐.
그렇죠.
지금 초단위 싸움을 하고 있는 거예요, 이
자,
두
모이고
선수.
있는 이재동 선수. 이재동
네.
선수 모이고 있습니다. 센터로 빠른 발빠른 저글링.
야, 드디어 이재동이 각계격파를 성공하는데요.
그렇죠. 이제 센터에서 이윤열을 몰아내네요.
이윤열 마음이 급해지게 생겼는데요. 탱크도 모아놨던 탱크가 많이 있는 상태에서 배슬이 모이지 않은 상태에서 지금 이윤열 선수도 멀티를 추가로 가져가야 되는데
자,
이재동 선수가
세기.
그런 시간 줄지 의문입니다 지금.
버무라붙이
들어가죠.
이재동 선수입니다.
네. 지금 다크선이 약간 늦었어요.
자, 스포지는
네.
사이언스를 치러서 저 멀리로.
지금은 다크선 타이밍이 약간 늦었습니다.
예.
럴커가 상당수 제거 당한 상태에서 다크선이 들어왔습니다.
기세로는 이재동이 여기까지도 이제 몰아붙이고 아웃까지 다가가겠다 싶었는데 잘 막았습니다. 이윤열 선수.
예, 이재동 선수 자원에 전혀 타격이 없기 때문에 추가로 디파일러라든지 럴커들이 계속 생산이 되고 있고요.
네.
이재동 선수 자신의 상황을 절대 유리하다고 생각하면 안 됩니다. 일단 뮤탈이 한 일이
그렇죠.
없었기 때문에
그렇죠.
예, 지금 이 상황에서 잘 싸워도 테라는 자원 견제가 없는 상황에서 병력은 진짜 무지하게 많이 나오거든요.
탱크는 확실하게 잡아주고 있는 이재동
예.
선수.
지금-
사이언스 베슬도 쌓이고 있어요.
예, 사이언스 베슬이 가장 이제 문제가 되는데 이재동 선수 입장에선 탱크는 어떻게 계속 잡아주고 있는데 베슬 잡는 게 이윤열 선수가 컨트롤을 계속 해주면서 베슬은 계속해서 살리고 있거든요. 베슬이 계속 모이게 되면 결국 업그레이드가 비슷해지고 유닛 양이 비슷해지게 된다면은 공짜로 상대 유닛을 잡아먹을 수 있는 베슬이 모이는 테란이 압도적으로 유리하게 다가가는 거죠.
근접 낙수원
네.
뒤로 빼는 이윤열.
자,
이게
베슬
말이죠.
선수, 베슬 잘 살려요. 그리고 이윤열 선수 추가 멀티 현재는 성공했습니다.
네, 이윤열 선수가 현존하는 모든 테란 중에
네.
스커지의 베스를 제일 안 잃는 테란입니다.
그렇죠.
예, 이 저 베스를 잡으려면 플레이그를 개발하는 수밖에 없어 보여요, 지금.
자, 플레이그 활용도 좀 적극적으로
네.
시도를 해봐야 되겠습니다. 자, 5시 총 멀티 견제에 실패를 한 이후에
예, 예.
이 센터에서의 이 힘싸움이 계속 진행이 되고 있는데요.
이렇게 하이브까지 간 상태에서 자원이 워낙 많은 현재 저그이기 때문에
찍혔는데
하나 잡혔죠 지금.
박구성 적극적으로
이
활용하면서
언덕!
밀어붙이고 있는 이재동 선수.
여기 언덕에서 막아야 돼요 이윤열 선수가. 이 언덕,
달라졌어요 병력.
예, 이 언덕까지 만약에 밀리게 되면은 이윤열 선수의 9시 멀티가 위험해지게 됩니다. 이 언덕까지는 지켜야 됩니다.
예, 이윤열 선수의 병력 관리는 정말 환상인데요. 지금
네.
양쪽으로 나눠져서 부대가 꼬였으면 오른쪽에 있는 부대 원래 다 죽어야 정상입니다. 근데
네.
그것까지 따로 위로 올려서 살려보내는 판단 너무 좋았고요.
네. 자, 이재동 선수의 개인 화면 한번 확인해 볼까요? 이재동 선수.
예, 자원 맞고
네, 센터 쪽.
약간 부족하고 있는 그런
네,
상황이네요.
그렇죠. 이 자원적으로 봤을 때는 가스 부족.
그렇다면 울트라가 굉장히 이렇게 많이 나오기는 힘들 것 같고.
저글링 던져주세요.
예, 스커지로.
자, 이윤열 어떻습니까?
두 세대 잡았는데요. 자, 이윤열 선수의 화면이죠.
그렇죠. 자, 사이언스 베슬 역시나 신경 쓰고 있는 이윤열 선수고요.
지금 사이언스 퍼실리티가 현재 파괴당해서 베슬이 추가로 공급이 되지 않고 있는 추가로 것까지만 나오고 있는 그런 상황이네요.
자, 서쪽으로 자신의 이제 본거지를
네.
삼고 있는 이윤열 선수였고요.
자, 반반 싸움이 되면은 테란 입장에서 보통 하는 말이 기동력이 없다. 테란 유닛들은 기동력이 많이 떨어진다는 말을 하지만 중후반이 되고 나면은 테란 입장이 오히려 중간에
이렇게 이거.
집중력이 약간 야, 이런 것들은 저그가 좋을 수밖에 없죠.
네.
이재동이 본좌 로드를 걷고
예.
있다는 느낌이 듭니다. 얘가 과거 마재윤 선수가 굉장히 잘 나가던 시절에
예.
플레이였거든요.
그렇죠.
조선으로 넣고
여기까지 밀렸어요.
저기
이윤열 선수.
넣고 디파일러로.
여기 지켜야 됩니다. 이윤열 선수 여기 지켜야 됩니다.
이재동이 밀리면 자원 타격을 드디어 받기 시작할 수도 있어요.
11시 멀티
그렇습니다.
지금 가져간 11시 멀티 못 지키죠. 그리고 9시도 럴커 이쪽에서 계속 긁어주면서 내려오게 되면 막기 힘들어집니다. 디파일러와 함께.
자, 9시 이후 11시까지 이윤열이
네.
가져가고 싶다라는 그 열망을 보여주었는데 그것을 또 이재동 선수가
네.
떠올랐어요. 베스.
네.
자, 그리고 저글링이 달라붙어 탱크까지 파괴를 시킵니다.
네, 이윤열 선수 조금 많이 승부가 많이 힘들어진다.
네, 몰아붙이는데요, 이재동.
패스를 순식간에 너무 많이 잃었고 마린 메딕이 이것저것 흩어져서 이재동 선수의 중앙 쪽에 자리 잡고 있는 럴커에 너무 많이 파괴당했다는 것이 현재 이거 중앙 앞마당까지 밀리겠는데
9시 쪽뿐 아니라 앞마당
예.
앞마당 쪽까지 밀어붙이고 있는 이재동 선수입니다. 11시 쪽은 이윤열 선수 자원색 전혀 없군요.
쓰거든요. 이재동은 유리할 때는
자,
이렇게
이렇게 6시 멀티 드랍십을 이용해서
약간
파괴보려 했습니다만.
약간 늦었습니다. 중앙 쪽에서 힘싸움을 하면서 이 드랍십이 5시 쪽으로
네.
진짜 움직였다면은 좋은 승부가 됐을 텐데 약간 늦은 감이 있죠
또
지금은.
그게 경기 운영을 이끌어내지 않았습니까?
이재동
선수 드랍십 맞아 볼 수
네.
없네요. 이재동 선수 16강 계속 첫 번째 경기 이윤열 선수를 상대로 블루스톰에서 승리를 거둡니다.
이재동 역시 뮤탈이 일단 뜨면은 나를 이길 자가 없다 라는 그런 여러가지
Caution, Free, Iris, Light, Mine, Flash, Jaedong, easy play, anytime, stop, nada, much, Slayer Boxer, C, Bisu, Savior, 16 of the most powerful StarCraft gamers in the world, LG, Intel Centrino, GOMTV, Star Invitational.
이윤영 선수이기 때문에 본작 오버라고 생각합니다.
Two powerhouse
첫
players,
번째 경기에서 이윤열
both
선수가
legends of their own type. The map will be Katrina, and I can't wait to see this game get started. But before that, we're going to recap on the previous game, Jaedong versus Nada, where Nada, well, he just lost too many tanks, too many vessels, even after gaining a central control advantage. The tanks and the vessels are essentially the backbone of the Terran army against Zerg. They're what you can use, of course, to irradiate the defilers, and then you can use the tanks to assist you in picking off any excess of lurkers that you can't use for your medic marine. So while he got that early advantage, Jaedong just had too much, I guess he was too much all over the map. Now to this game, Much versus Nada. Much, an excellent Protoss player. He is, well, excuse me, his stats are, if I can pull them up here. Protoss versus Terran, 29 and 18, a 61.7% win ratio. He's ranked 18th in Kespa on the map Blue Storm. Excuse me, Katrina. We don't care about Blue Storm. Katrina, he is 7 and 3. So definitely comfortable on this map. A lot of people argue that Protoss dominate this map on Terran. That is a statement I would certainly agree with. It is very difficult for Terran to fight off the Protoss, especially once they tech to carriers. Much is a well-known player. He's very good at his risky builds, and also known for his ability in macro, which I believe is where his name was from. Nada, on the other hand, versus Terran, or excuse me, versus Protoss, he is 98 and 62 with a 61.3% win ratio. He is also a powerhouse of his own kind. One of the most accomplished pro gamers of all time. And again, this is their first match since December 27th of 2006. One question is, can Nada overcome the race imbalance on this map? Does Nada have any type of special builds? How will Much capitalize even further on the race imbalance on this map? We will see as the game begins to unfold. Looks like we have some more time before the players are ready, getting their mouse and keyboard settings up correctly before the game begins so that they are playing at their absolute best. Now, one thing to note historically is that Much has actually had quite a winning record against Nada historically. He has had 3 consecutive wins on Nada recently, and I'm sure playing on a map like Katrina now for Nada doesn't make it any easier. Remember, Nada just lost that first game. If Nada gets eliminated now, well, he very well may be knocked out of the tournament unless we enter a tie phase. For the record, these are re-recordings of the previous match, but I will cast them as if they are live. We had some sound problems previously, so if you see any shots of my face while we're casting and my mouth doesn't seem to sync up, that's why. Again, we're back here waiting at the GOMTV StarCraft Invitational. The atmosphere in the room was very tense. Many fans showing up for Nada. He's a very popular pro gamer, not only for his style, but for his looks as well. A lot of people really wanted him to see, have him win this event, so there's a lot of pressure riding on him from that. Again, this is Group B, nicknamed the Group of Death within the foreigner community. And again, the clock is ticking down, the sand is running through the hourglass, and soon this game will begin. Both players going over in their minds what types of builds we will be seeing in this event. They've already orchestrated it, they've already trained for it with their pro teams. Now it's a matter of execution. It's a matter of being able to perform when it actually matters. Looking at the records here for Much on the Blue Storm, with just his versus Terran, he's actually only, Katrina versus Terran, he's actually only 2-1. So while he has an excellent winning record on Katrina, most of his experience has been Protoss versus Zerg. Nada, on the other hand, the game has started. Never mind. The fans cheering for the players
두 번째
beforehand.
경기 시작됐습니다. 먼저 북쪽에 있는
Fighting.
포토스
Or actually what they're saying is whiting.
네.
A little bit of Konglish there. Actually means good luck. But is rooted in the original English word fighting.
따라서 유불리가 많이 갈린다라고 말을 하는데 뭐 그런 건 없어요 이제.
We see much at the north and nada at the south. Far positions. This will make it very difficult if Nada opts to push the Protoss' main.
어제 경기를 또 복귀 안 할 수가 없네요.
Fast Nexus is abundantly common on a map like Katrina because you start out with your expo in the back of your base rather than an expo that you have to fight for in the front. For that reason, many Terrans go fast command center. I've even seen command center before barracks on this map. Builds such as that are a bit risky. Nexus first for Protoss, however, not so risky. Very easy to pull off.
박용민 선수의 테란전이 29승 18패로 61.7%.
And the pylon positioned at the front, if he puts gateways there, it can function as a wall against the Protoss. Excuse me, against the Terran. It'll work for the Protoss.
입장에서는 박용민 선수 충분히 해볼 만한 그런 맵이죠.
Protoss many times use their buildings in such a fashion so that they can block off vulture bike rushes early on. Vulture bikes, of course, have such speed and can kill probes so quickly. The Protoss have to defend early on. I remember playing StarCraft the first year it came out, and everybody thought the vulture bikes sucked because they couldn't do that much damage to buildings and died very quickly, but pros soon figured out how powerful they can be, especially against a race like Protoss, with the ability to plant mines and take out probes with ease. And of course, cover for tanks. We see much scouting what looks like the left position. Normally the Protoss would scout the right position. Cybernetic score now being constructed.
박용민 선수. 마찬가지죠, 이윤열 선수. 원배럭 가스 그리고 가스 채취를 하고 있어요.
It looks like Nada's only put 3 in the Vespian gas geyser. Remember, on a map like Katrina, you're positioned farther away from your gas geyser. So to have optimum gas mining, you have to put 4 in there. That's something that all StarCraft players should always take note to, is how far away is the starting building from the Vespian gas geyser. However, this is not a mistake on his part. He only needs gas at this specific rate to get the factory out in time. He may even take an SCV or 2 off just because he wants more minerals early on.
질럿이 하나 지금 달리고 있는데 이윤열 선수가
Much has found his opponent, but the wall-in is already finished. Terran walls in early to stop that early Protoss rush. Zealots are very strong against the Marines, but once the Terran walls in, the Zealots are not that strong anymore because they just can't get to those Marines. Note that Much has already gotten Zealots. This is an indicator many times that he may be going for a early Robo Bay as well. Spending money on the Zealots rather than the Dragoons allows his gas to build up a little bit further. Dragoon range now being upgraded. The factory completes, and a sloppy move by Nada. He has trapped his SCV behind the factory. That SCV will not be able to mine minerals. Every worker counts. Much has encountered the SCV. He spotted it as it was leaving. Because of that, Nada will not get a glimpse into Much's base. And a hidden Robo Bay. I want to note that this is very abusive based off of the psychology that Nada has probably trained himself to have about what Protoss would normally do on this map. Protoss is normally getting that fast nexus, although he's obviously going to be aware it's not too much of a fast nexus since he spotted the Zealot and he spotted the Dragoon. Much knows that most Terrans will try to expand very quickly to counteract the fact that Protoss expand very quickly. Now getting a Robo Bay, which will be used for a proxy Reaver drop. Here comes Much, harassing that supply depot. He wants to pick off these SCVs and, of course, force the Terran to pull the SCVs off of mining minerals. Any SCVs he loses will be very bad news for him. Note how he backs the Dragoons up once the tank comes out, forcing the Terran to move the tank uncomfortably close, then dashing forward as Dragoon range has finished. It's a game of cat and mouse right now. If Terran loses the tank, the game is over. Nada has had this situation happen to him thousands of times before and knows what must be done to recover. He will have to keep his tank alive until siege mode comes into play, and their siege mode is the harassment will end.
네, 이 정도는 이득은 봤지만 리버를
Terran has set up his expansion now. Nada is unaware, though, that very soon a Reaver drop could be coming, and that's bad news for Nada.
본진 쪽을 좀 보면은 흐름을 보면 알 수 있겠죠.
본진 오른쪽 아래
네, 여기 아머리 건설되고요.
It looks like Nada.
물론 방법 중에 하나이긴 한데요.
Early armory here. And he's picking up 2 Dragoons. Perhaps he's going to use the elevator strategy where you take several units and drop them over in the location that the Terran can't see. That way you have a Reaver Dragoon push early on. This could work out very well for for Much right now. Although it looks like he's actually moving his Marine forward. Nada, an excellent player who has already predicted the possibility of such an attack due to the fact that the Zealots and Dragoons came out so early. Here they come now. Much on the way to grabbing the Reaver and that last Dragoon. He's going to have to use these SCVs to block off these 2 tanks so that he can fight off this attack. But here comes a shuttle now, and if he can drop the shuttle and pick off a few tanks, it'll be bad news for Nada. Nada loses 1 tank. He can use this shuttle to drop the Reaver, then pick it up again, over and over and over, until he can eventually pick off all the tanks. They are, of course, low on HP, making it rather difficult to keep alive, obviously. Notice that he's got the Dragoons behind Nada's expansion. Nada knows that he has to get the minerals back fast. Much really taking advantage of the build, which Nada picked based off of what Protosses most commonly do on this map. He did not get an early engineering bay. He did get the armory, which means that he's going to be much weaker to shuttle harassment. Much has free reign with his shuttle over Nada's base. Drops the Dragoon, but picks up again. Many times Protoss has dropped the Dragoon so that the tanks automatically target fire that Dragoon. Then he drops the Reaver, because it's the Reaver that matters, not the Dragoon. The Reaver will do the bulk of the damage. Another Reaver has been produced. We can see the shuttle now backing out. I see an expansion being made at the top left for Much. An expansion which is later than Nada's, but it looks like he's done the necessary damage. Reaver drops, nope, but Much missed micros, losing those SCVs. Much's strategy has been much riskier than what you would normally see in a proxy Reaper strategy, because he dumped his entire army into Nada's base. So it's integral for Much that he not get too much farther behind. And a starport immediately carrier rushing against the Terran. He has 2 Reavers now. Much does not want to let these Dragoons get too close to his base. Excuse me, Much does not want to let those Vulture bikes get too close to his base. I'm such a noob sometimes. Here comes the Reaver now. It looks like he's going to drop here in an attempt to take out those tanks, but loses both Reavers. Awful play by Much. Very sloppy. Even losing a Dragoon at the front, she will be susceptible to a push, and now would be the time to do that, because, Much is already teching to carriers. Nada scans just to see if there's enough Dragoons for him to pick off, and there are Vulture bikes planting spider mines in the way. Dragoons have to back off now. This could be game very soon. 1 carrier being produced. That 1 carrier can help assist holding off this rush, but it really depends, because Nada's already gotten that early armory out. He can already get Goliaths, which are the counter to the carriers. Nada definitely ahead right now. Much attempting to make another gateway, but he has to stay alive. Much knows he needs to win this game, so he's so he can secure some type of spot early on in this tournament. Vulture bikes and tanks coming in now. He uses the Zealot to take a lot of hits from the tanks, rushing forward with the Dragoons in an attempt to pick off any tanks he can. One tank remains. Much or not is going to try to sneak in here with a Vulture bike, but nice move by Much, blocking that off with a pylon so that the Vulture bikes cannot do what damage they would have hoped. Again, Much using his Reaver wisely. Nada attempting to reinforce this push that he set up. It's now or never. And here comes another Scarab tank, very low on hit points. He's been using this Reaver excellently to hold off the attack of Nada's. Nice control once again at picking up these stray units. He's going to move in again. He wants to do as much damage as physically possible. He may be able to drop a Dragoon there and draw the mines, but he doesn't know the mine is there. That could have been an excellent opportunity, but how could Much have known? I know, because I'm the observer. Or at least the caster. More Dragoons moving in now. And a bit of a sloppy control by Much, letting his Dragoon get hit. Note the location of the proxy robotics bay makes it very difficult to reinforce this attack with Reavers. However, Nada has already expanded. A starport going up, possibly for some early harassment. Drop ship, actually just drops in general are very strong on Katrina because the main that you start out on is just so large.
이윤열 선수가 현재 멀티를 안정적으로 이제 가져간 상태에서 리버 드랍이라든지 각종 드랍에 대한 방어만 조금 해주면서 그렇죠. J-가스 멀티 가져. We see the SCV constructing the command center. Goliath on the move, noticing something odd about that early Reaver drop, that it perhaps was a bit too quick. Shuttle luckily manages to move out, and there is nothing to defend these SCVs. But Much is dropped. Rather poor in my opinion, could have done a lot better there. Goliath taking out that pylon. He will not have access to a robotics bay at this point in time. Here come more Reavers dropping. They will easily take out these Goliaths. Reavers powerful, but only with the assistance of the shuttle. Otherwise they are too slow and too sluggish. Nada trying to get into position to pick off that possible shuttle, but it looks like he has that hidden on the mini-map.
박영민 선수가 롱기누스 맵에서 최영선 선수가 굉장히 멋진 장기전 끝에
Dragoon's going to drive out those Goliaths. He wants to maintain that tech for as long as possible. Note the positioning of Nada's barracks just as a spotter. He wants to have some idea of where the Protoss is going to be moving from. He doesn't have complete control of the map yet, but getting an expansion ahead of Much certainly helps in that whole process.
저곳에 로보틱스 가만 내둔다기보다는 그냥 본진에 하나 더 짓는 편이 낫죠 지금은.
그렇죠. 훨씬 낫습니다.
Much continuing to muster up a fleet of carriers. The carriers, of course, really aren't that helpful until you can get a certain number of them. And here comes Nada now in an attempt to pick off that first one. Carefully pulling him over the ledge. Head not a scan. He may have been able to pick that off. Nada pulls away because Goliaths are rather weak against Dragoons, but rather strong against carriers. Here comes the carrier now with the assistance of some Reavers to help fight off any Goliaths. Now, Much picking off the weakened carrier. The carrier-Goliath combination, now doing an incredible amount of damage. He can take out this command center rather quickly. He now sees what's about to happen. Meanwhile, a counterattack over here by Much on this expansion. Backing up, though. He's going to use these Reavers to try to pick off the remaining Goliaths. But he has to be very careful with how he does that. He may end up losing. He has lost 4 Reavers this game. Much not very good at babysitting his Reavers. And is he going to lose the shuttle as well? Yes, he did. Goliath shooting somehow behind himself, taking out that shuttle. While Much may have the carriers, he is behind. It's going to be a matter of can Much muster up the amount of carriers necessary to stay in this game.
그 앞마당 두 번째 가스 멀티에 탱크가 생각보다 너무 많았거든요. 이윤열 선수가.
그렇죠. 리버를 보고
Nada, a smart player, knows that he can scan his main frequently and just pick off these stray observers, which Much is using to coordinate his attacks.
두 개의 리버도 이렇습니다. 자, 이유 그림이라고 한다면 이윤열 선수가 상당히 굉장히 기분이 좋은 상황.
Here come some vulture bikes in the Nada cam, as we can see here. Much has not allowed those stray robotics bays to be utilized.
지금 꾸준히 모으고 있거든요. 이러면서 템플러를 보유를 해야 되는 것이 상대방 골리앗 업그레이드된 골리앗이 계속 쌓이게 되면은 캐리어만으로는
Much seems like he's decided to keep the positioning of that pylon there. So he is walled off from his own main. Dropships would be very strong against Much's main right now, but it does not appear that that's Nada's goal right now.
올라오려고 할 때 드라군은 살짝 이득 보고 빠지고 이러면서 시간을 끌어야 돼요.
One thing about Katrina is that the very architecture of the map allows carriers to constantly harass and retreat from the Terran, and with the Dragoons underneath the carriers, hunting down and actually eliminating the carriers for the Terran is almost an impossibility.
올라갑니다. 자, 골리앗과 그리고 탱크 다수 병력을 보유하고 있는 이윤열 선수 올라가는데 자, 아래로 치고 허리를 지금 치고 들어오고 있죠.
예, 지금 엇갈렸어요.
자, 다시 회군합니다.
Now we can see that Nada is now moving in here, attempting to target fire the command center rather than the SCVs. If Nada can save this, it will mean that this attack has been a blunder. If Much can take this out, Nada will be behind, but Nada manages to save it anyways.
한 100 이하까지는 떨어졌던 것 같은데.
네, 일단 빨간불은 들어왔었습니다.
지금 무리해서 만약에 드래곤으로 계속 센터를 쳤다면은
네.
여기서 드래곤 싹 잡히고 이윤열 선수가 원하는 그림 위쪽으로 쑥 올라가면서 박영민 선수의 제2가스 멀티가 한 번에 파괴당할 수 있었던 그런 위험한 상황이었어요.
이윤열이 올라갈까?
Now again, Nada attempting to push forward, Much constantly counterattacking, forcing Nada's army to stay where Much wants it. The imbalance of Katrina has now come into play, and Nada must do something, splitting his army up. He has now sent it up here to pick off the probes and the Nexus here. Much realizes what's going on and then responds accordingly by retracting that expansion harassment and now coming up here to pick off the rest of these units. Nada surrenders the Nexus to the forces, Much surrenders the Nexus to the forces of Nada.
자, 탱크!
Picking off all of these Goliaths, but he will be able to get the tanks as well. And with the majority of the tank army up here, if Nada can pick off the rest of those tanks,
다시 내려왔습니다.
Much can pick off the rest of those tanks, Nada will be far behind in his ground play, but he manages to save the tanks anyways. Much getting pinned into a corner, trying to pick off at least as many tanks as he can, so the Dragoon army will be able to do something.
박영민이 지금은 중간에서 너무 시간을 너무 못하면서 자기 넥서스가 날아갔으면은 어차피 지킬 수 없었다라고 한다면은 같이
Zealot legs have not been upgraded yet for the Protoss, making them a little bit weaker of a ground army than we would have hoped to have Much see. Unless, of course, you're a Nada fan, because Nada needs every chance he can get to get ahead right now.
네.
좀 전에 미적미적 거리던 모습과는 완전히 차원이 다르죠.
Much is expoing to the top right expansion. That is the most difficult expansion for the Protoss to access, and probably the best strategic decision for Much to do. Much not necessarily known for his mid-game strategic play. He is known for his strategic openers, though.
신중하게, 왜냐면 자신이 한시 멀티를 가져가면서 이곳이 깨져도 제2가스 멀티를 새로 가져간다는 생각 때문에.
Here we see the Dragoon carrier fleet once again getting into a similar position as before, forcing Nada to pull back to his own expansion rather than be aggressive, upgrading air weapons as we speak. 3 Stargates for the Protoss.
되면은 계속 위쪽으로 치고 올라가면서 상대방 멀티만 계속 잡아주면 되거든요. 박영민 선수의 제일 위험한 점은
and once again, it looks like Much realizes that Nada's army cannot be everywhere at once, and especially not pushing him. Attacks with the carriers in the main. Here he comes for the command center yet again. If he can get this command center, it will be pivotal and massively bad for Nada. But Nada once again, proving to be the command center hero, has saved the command center again. Hopefully he will not let that refinery burn down.
점사라든지 그리고 지형을 이용해서 왔다 갔다 동선을 플레이할 때 테란 골리앗은 공격력이 풀업이 돼도 결국은
The positioning of Much's troops has proven to be more than valuable. And when those carriers continue to get upgraded, they will be very strong. Note that the carrier position now can do some serious harassment from all angles, picking off factories, picking off Goliath. A few vulture bikes coming up here to harass that top right expansion. Vulture bike harassment is probably the only way for Nada to possibly come back right now, since Goliaths are not really a mobile unit. Much, however, realizing this, moves forward, picking off mines as they come out. Not everyone, though. Now, these vulture bikes have done a lot of damage to Much's probes so far. Much needs to regain that economic advantage, but Nada has to play very strategically on this map, very position-oriented if he wants to come back and win this. Here comes Much once again with the carriers. It's all centered around these carriers and how he can use them to delay Nada's push. Nada's ahead unit-wise, but if Much can pick off enough stuff in Nada's base, then it's going to be bad news for Nada. Nada already losing once on an imbalanced map. Zerg versus Terran.
오른쪽 위쪽에 있는 미네랄멘트를 먹어서 거기를 수비 라인으로 만들면 거기를 돌파 안 하면 앞마당으로 못 오게끔 이렇게 동선을 좀
Again, look at how he utilizes that ridge over there, clearly indicating that Nada is a very formidable opponent, but still not enough for what Much is doing to him right now. It looks like Much has I would almost say about 9 carriers in his fleet now, and as every carrier enters that army, they will become exponentially more powerful. Now, Nada very carefully manages to pick off that expansion with only a tank and a Goliath because Much's army is positioned in such a way. Here he comes again with the carriers. Looks like he's going to be going for the kill, either the command center or on the SCVs, but he has to try to do some defensive moves on these Goliaths because the carriers are rather weak without the Dragoons there to attack the Goliaths for them. Here he comes, though. Nada's going to lose a lot of units, scanning over this ridge to make sure he can have vision of what he's attacking. Coming in from 2 angles, but Much's carrier control is just brilliant. Nada has managed to pick off the stray Robo-Bay, but at what cost, really? Much losing control of his carriers for a second and flying over those Goliaths. He has managed to barely save his carriers. Fortunately enough for him. Note that he did manage to pick off those 2 armories, meaning the Goliaths that were lost within that amount of time will not be replenished with the quickness that he would have hoped for. Here he comes now with the carriers, going to pick off this small army over here. Much's cannon placement rather sloppy, putting a pylon at that far right position to force the Vulture Bikes to at least move around. But it's not enough, and Nada once again has some positional advantage at this expo, forcing the probes to not mine. The carriers will have to return to take out these Vulture Bikes. Nice moves by Nada, expanding at the far left and the mid left, positions which the carriers cannot quite engage as long as Nada is being aggressive at the upper right, especially since Much lost so many Dragoons. Much has done an excellent job with his observers, making sure they're acting as a spotter for any unwanted units leaving his base. Much definitely has map control, but Nada may have a positional advantage right now. Both players with their most recent expansions at a positional advantage. It's going to come down to how the players can play this. Much is going to need to do a better job, though, of defending that top right expansion. If he can get adequate defenses and not put so much focus on his carriers that he can actually maneuver around the map to where Nada's expansions are, it'll be good. But right now, strategically, Nada is still playing better. Much just has the imbalance on his side. Not to say that Much is bad, not to say that Much is getting lucky. Much is playing quite well. Much really the master of position here, though, with his army. Nada has fallen into many traps because of his style. Here comes Nada with a large army pushing forward, but Much has that high ground advantage, going for the Goliath first. If he can take out those Goliaths. Oh, but instead, it looks like Much is going to possibly counterattack the expansion, which is not defended whatsoever. Nada realizes this and is pulling back once again. Once again going for the command center. This is the third time we have seen this. Will he actually be able to take out this command center? Yes, he will! Bad news for Nada. You can see the discomfort in his face. Once again, picking off the building command center. That is minus, 400 times 2 for the Terran, which comes out to 800. I may not be a math major, but I can still do that kind of math. Again, very, very good moves by Much. Just pushing his opponent back. Not allowing him to really get close to any of his expansions. Now, Nada is still up on expansions, but it's going to be a matter of can Nada muster up the forces necessary to come back and win this. Nada possibly being the most unlucky player in this league so far, having 2 maps that do not favor his race against 2 players who really know what they're doing on them. Now he's chasing his opponent down again, but now Much has drawn all of the Terran's carriers onto, or at least out of his main, which will make the carriers rather strong if they can get to harass his main. Here we see Nada having the high ground advantage, but pulling away with the Dragoons, using those Dragoons to keep the carriers away. He will now pick off all of these crucial buildings. But Goliaths happen to be sitting in Nada's main as well. Almost losing 1 carrier. Much really managing to keep his carriers alive, which is really helping him dominate this game.
결국은 캐리어로 계속 생산 건물 SCV 그리고 상대방 뒷마당 아머리라든지 뒷마당 멀티 센터 언제든지 공략할 수 있게 준비를 하고 있는 이런 플레이를 펼쳐주고 있다는 것이죠.
Here we see once again Nada moving up. Will it be enough units? It's not clear. Much has managed to pick off a lot of units, a lot of Goliaths, especially with the carriers. And if he does not have enough Goliaths, then the tanks are essentially useless. Here he comes now, picking off a few tanks here and there, maintaining that high ground advantage, but it looks like Nada is now pushing him back. Nada realizes he must attack this expansion now, but the carriers will be very strong from that angle. Note how many ridges and cliffs and ramps are just cluttered all over this map, making a player who was strong with carrier micro and carrier attack, hit and run guerrilla tactics. Just a powerhouse on this map. Picking off more and more Goliaths. He is now pinned, not into a corner. That is Much carriers. Get it, guys? Raffle. Look at the amount of interceptors, and the Goliaths cannot quite reach the carriers due to the positioning, or at least the geography of the map, and Much will take this out with ease. Nada's still trying his best to micro these carriers, but has now lost a large chunk of his main army, and here comes Much now, moving down towards the bottom left. Much has just taken out a large part of Nada's army. I am on the edge of my seat now watching this game, asking myself, can Nada really make it through this? My predictions for this group were Nada and Jaedong, but it looks like the maps may be working against Nada now. And here comes another command center snipe, unless he can heal it, and he cannot! Command center's going down everywhere for Nada. Much sticking with that command center harassment strategy. Normally players just go and target fire all of the SCVs, knowing that they can take out as many workers as possible, but Much seems to want to force his opponent to spend more minerals on the command center so that he cannot really replenish the Goliath tank count. Even taking out the scanner. Much is a bloodthirsty monster, foaming at the mouth, tearing apart any Terran that comes in his way. Now picking off supply depots in the back of Nada's base.
이러면서 드래곤
Goliath also attacking in different locations. Much has 4 different attacks actually going on in 4 different locations, knowing that the Terran player who lacks mobility on such a map like this, but also lacks mobility in general, cannot cover himself from all these different angles, doing so many hit and run tactics, much proving that he knows how to abuse this map. He is an expert at this, and his build was well practiced and well executed.
유니언 많이 어려워졌는데요. 이제 캐리어와 드래곤
Here we see the Goliath moving in again.
계속 나오기 힘든 상황이
But the
됐습니다.
ridge advantage, one carrier goes down, but does that really matter? Popped like a pimple.
예, 카트리나에서의 캐리어의 활용도
I guess with that comment, I guess we should say that Much has a lot of acne because there is just no way he can get rid of all those carriers.
활용해서 뒷마당 멀티, 생산 시설 파괴, 그리고 각종
Now here he comes again, attacking the refinery so that Terry cannot get the crucial Vespian gas that they require to produce the Goliath and, of course, the tanks.
전장에 박용 선수의 포인트가 훨씬 더 이제 많아지게 되는 상황이에요.
멀티 많이 했죠, 박용민 선수.
자, 이윤현 선수가 반드시 막아내야 되는 전선입니다.
네.
Much has now secured another expansion at the far right, and Nada is put in a position where he will have to defend. This could be the killing blow. Another ridge over here where the Protoss can come in and dominate. Goliaths are many in numbers, but are they enough to take this out? Much can just sit back and just pick those SCVs off with the carriers. It's essentially impossible for the Terran to win in such a position, especially with an expansion like that one. Taking these SCVs out, going to pick the command center off. Here comes Nada's counterattack, a group of vulture bikes, which will harass this expansion. This is Nada's only hope of coming back into this game, is minimizing the number of expansions that his opponent has. Much not too terribly intimidated by that, knowing that the Terran army is pretty much gone and all he has to do is pick off a few units. Good game! Nada has left. He has been Katrina'd. I have to say, Much played very, very well. Nada, I think, played almost, I hate to say this, but a little bit better than Much, but the map was just too much. Stay tuned, guys. We got more games coming here at the GOMTV StarCraft Invitational. Thank you.
Caution, Free, Iris, Light, Mine, Flash, Jaedong, easy play, anytime, stop, nada, much. Slayer's Boxer, C, Bisu, Savior, 16 of the most powerful StarCraft gamers in the world. LG, Intel Centrino, GOMTV, Star Invitational.
Welcome back to the GOMTV StarCraft Invitational. This is Nick Tasteless broadcasting from Seoul, Korea. This is the, second day of the tournament. Group B, we have Jaedong, Red Nada, Slayer's Boxer, and Much, all pitted against each other in a battle of the death. Only 2 will make it out of the group. The next game, but Much versus Slayer's Boxer. An exciting match and a very much so anticipated one. But before we discuss that match, I want to just do a recap of our previous game. We did see Much versus Nada on the map Katrina. A really interesting game. Much opens up with that proxy Reaver strategy based off of the assumption that the Terran will fast expo, because the Terran assumes that the Protoss will fast expo. Thus, a game of psychology is worked out. The Reaver drop proved to be successful, although Much was losing way too many Reavers. The response, well, at least while he was doing the strategy, Much was massing up carriers at a rapid rate. But the imbalance played out, and then it just turned out that the carriers were too much, despite much as sloppy Reaver control. Nada played a little bit more strategically, but still got behind. There was Im Johan, Slayer's Boxer. He just landed here in his dropship not long ago. Slayer's Boxer will be playing a Terran versus Protoss. This is his weakest matchup historically. Remember, Slayer's Boxer, he is not even in the top 30 in Kespa right now, but what's important to note is that he was possibly the most influential and successful StarCraft player of all time. Some people say he's past his time. I'm not one of them. He is a legend. He has revolutionized the way we play this game today. Protoss vs. Terran is weakest matchup, 63 and 71 all-time pro record. It was much better several years ago. That puts him at a 47% win ratio. Taking a look at Nada's stats. I can't find Nada's stats. Here they are. Nada's Terran versus... Excuse me, we don't care about Nada. What am I doing? We care about Much. Much is Terran... Much is Protoss versus Terran. Much smaller record, 17 and 10. 63% win ratio. He is a very powerful player. Much knows that he is up against a legend. Can he kill that legend? Or will he suffer to Im Johan's brilliance? Im Johan's favorite unit is the dropship. Im Johan, of course, his ID is Slayer's Boxer. I feel comfortable calling him Im Johan because he seems to be the only StarCraft player that's, even people outside Korea know his real name. Head-to-head against Much, the man who just slayed Nada, an excellent Terran player. And one of the successors of Slayer's Boxer. This tournament's turned out to be just incredible. We see lots of fans there, all probably skipping school and hiding their faces. The tournament, the atmosphere is just tense. And again, the map itself, a little bit of a Protoss favoring map, not quite as imbalanced as Katrina, but at the same time, this is Slayer's Boxer, anything could happen. It's really going to be a matter of if Much gets carriers in time, what type of strategies Much opens up with. Will he play aggressively again? I don't know. Again, Slayer's Boxer. On the online polls, he was voted by over 50% of these Korean fans that he would be most likely to win this tournament. A lot of pressure riding on him. He has since been becoming a pro gamer. He has joined the Air Force and is now on a pro team, which represents the Korean Air Force team. However, now that he is in the military, he has had less time to train, thus causing his game overall to atrophy. He is still a monster, though.
확인해 보시기 바라겠습니다. GOMTV 스타 인비테이셔널 B조 16강 B조의 세 번째 경기 박영민 선수와
And it looks like the game is close to starting.
박영민 선수의 경기로 떠나보시죠.
Knock 'em down. Lock 'em down. Shut 'em down. Shut 'em down. Knock 'em down. Knock 'em down. Shut 'em down. Come on. Shut 'em down.
Im Johan with a lot more fans here than Much. Possibly putting Much in a bit of an uncomfortable position. There's Much at the top right on the map, Blue Storm. Just finished playing an incredibly long, incredibly intense game against Nada. Boxer not yet having played a game yet, seems to be nodding to himself, feeling confident. Now, is Much warmed up or is Much worn out? We will find out soon. Note an early scouting probe. That is unusual, and it's an indicator that we're going to see a proxy pylon, which will then develop into a proxy gateway. Why would it not be a proxy robo? Because it was just sent out too soon. Terrans are the race that scouts later than the Protoss. And for that reason, the Terrans are much less likely to spot the proxy. That's why you see so many Protoss players doing such builds. Interestingly enough, though, Much seems to be confident with playing with such an aggressive opener like this. Perhaps it's because he has that 1-0 advantage, feeling a little bit comfortable, willing to take a risk. Builds like this, when they backfire on you, can act as a double-edged sword, putting you even further behind. Gateway now getting thrown up, probably a gateway on 9. Maybe even a gateway on 8. Such builds like this end up, the result is probes that are sacrificed in the process and non-constant probe production. Much actually scouts from or with another probe so that if Boxer had scouted earlier, he would not have caught on right away that something was happening here. Is he going to go for the gas steal? He may do that. That would complement this rush, but Im Yo-han has already taken that. Vespian gas guys are just in time. Perhaps it was just a feint by Much to apply more pressure to Boxer to get him, to make him get that Vespian gas guys early, maybe to force him to sack SCVs and Marines later on, helping out with this rush. But no, Slayer's Boxer has already set up that supply depot, and such openers like this make it rather difficult for the Protoss Zealot rush, which is about to occur, to be very effective at all. Many Terrans don't wall in on maps such as these, or many maps at all, because they want that SCV to get to the, make the building, and then get back to the minerals as quickly as possible. But Im Yo-han seems to be playing rather cautiously, perhaps because of Much's aggressive style early on. But his SCV might have been driven up here, and it looks like Im Yo-han will spot the proxy gateway, putting him in a very, very difficult position. Factory for the Terran. And he must get that factory out soon. Protoss making the cybernetic score. He may go for an early Dark Templar drop. He may mix this up and then go for a faster Reaver drop. The Zealot is rather useless right now. Much perhaps wanted to get some type of early advantage if Boxer had not used that early, if Boxer had not walled in. We could see Much using the scouting probe. He's lurking for the proxy factory. Many Terrans respond with proxy gateway builds with the proxy factory because the gateway is in or is outside of the Terran's main, and then what happens is they can send vulture bikes into that location and take out the probes, and by location I mean the Protoss main. However, Im Yo-han playing a very by-the-book build right now. Dragoon range has started. Oh god, I love water. The factory add-on is almost completed. Here comes the Dragoon now. Much making a second Zealot, which might have been unnecessary. Im Yo-han, oh there I am now, casting away. Trying to find the camera, but I can't because the lights are so bright in the stage. I was not a detector unit. Again, back to the... Alright, here we see the barracks being lifted off. This is a rather risky move, but Im Yo-han had to get that second SCV over there to repair that depot. The positioning of the bunker did not allow for two SCVs to repair. A risky move by Boxer, but a safe one nonetheless. Now here comes the tank, going to attempt to drive that out. Much now throwing up a Nexus, feeling confident that even though he has not made that second gateway in his main, he can still hold off what Boxer has, primarily because he has scouted any possible hidden factory that may be there. Boxer has now upgraded siege mode. The Dragoon harassment will end for now.
게이트도 전진해서 지었고 드래곤도 지금 보니까 계속해서 나오는 것 같고
retreating to the high ground is what Much has chosen to do, blocking off any scouting opportunities by placing a Zealot in that location. Boxer is in the dark right now, Much having map control. Boxer suddenly realized he can't do anything with those Marines. He's going to attempt to drive that Zealot back, possibly to sneak a scouting SCV through.
돌고 있었어요.
Here we see a turret going up and a command center.
센터 임요한 선수가 이런 식으로 툭툭 치면 한번
The robotics bay,
앞마당 쪽에 멀티하고 있는 상황.
the additional gateway, and soon the Nexus will complete. One thing to note about what's happening with Much right now is that if he loses that gateway, well, his unit production is far, far behind.
파이널 하나와 게이트웨이 하나가 이곳에 건설되고
So he's going to do whatever he can to delay Boxer from taking out that gateway.
큰 영향을 받지 않았다.
네, 알았습니다.
There's a Nexus, but a bit sloppy by Much, has not actually transferred probes there. Perhaps a bit shaken up that his rush was not as effective. Here comes Imyohan now, moving in towards Much's base. Putting a bunker there. I'm not sure if the bunker was necessary. Maybe it is, but a bunker spent and not used can be a bunker wasted. Every mineral counts. Much double expoing. Rather risky move, but considering that he does have map control right now, and Boxer has little intelligence about what his opponent is doing, it may not be an unwise decision after all.
박영민 선수와 임요한 선수의 경기 오늘 세 번째 경기입니다.
Maybe someday girls will go see crazy when they see my face too, I don't know. But here comes the Dragoons now, picking up the tank, which will have massive negative ramifications on Boxer's push later on in the game. You cannot afford to lose that many tanks. Doing just the right amount of damage, backing out, isolating the bunker, now moving the Dragoons out. Boxer has had to pull the SCVs off just to try to drive these units away. Those are units that are not mining minerals.
그리고 드라군은 참 운전을 잘해서
more and more gateways being thrown up by Much. He has to be ready for any kind of possible push. Although picking up tanks like that may give him an option to get a Stargate out earlier.
이렇게 됐어요.
탱크 3개를 잡히고 큰 힘입니다. 박영민 선수의 제2 멀티, 앞마당을 가져간 이후에 3시 멀티가 지금은 박영민 선수가 큰 문제 없이 가져갈 수 있게 됐습니다.
Imyohan may have overextended himself slightly, perhaps doing so because he thought he would be more ahead after taking out that initial gateway. Observers now on the move.
부려도 될 만하게 됐어요. 지금은 이제 배짱이 아니고 안정적인 제2 멀티를 만약에 저 멀티를 가져가지 않고
soon Terran will have 4 factories, but it looks like only 2 have add-ons. We'll find it if he gets more later on. You can usually tell how many add-ons how many tanks the Terran is planning on getting based off how many add-ons the factory has. We see an engineering bay over here just in case some type of early Reaver drop is coming. He will be able to spot that in time. Boxer is expanding again. This is a rather peculiar situation. I think a timing push would be more wise, but he is the Emperor, so I will not question him too much. Other than to say that such maps as this reward Protosses that have good macro, and it may be difficult for the Terran to push up that hill, which is in the middle of the map. Another factory coming out, 2 upgrades. Sometimes this is an indicator that a push is coming up. He may be upgrading Vulture Bike mines and Vulture Bike speed. Good Terran players wait until the last second to upgrade that so they could spend their money on factories.
게이트웨이도 늘어나고 있는
많이 늘리지 않았습니까? 지금 게이트를
한번 싸워줄
I see the cybernetic score making. That means he's upgrading air weapons since Dragoon range has already been made, and that's the only logical upgrade at this point in time.
못 이기겠다 싶어서 지금 현재 멀티를 빠르게 두 번째 멀티를.
It looks as though Much is testing out Boxer's defenses, trying to pick off a few units here, but it might be a blunder for Much. Not clear though. No, he is actually getting a reasonable amount of tanks. Once again, Boxer's tank count has been diminished. Dragoons are much easier to replenish than tanks. Tanks cost so much Vespian gas.
박영민 선수 입장에서는 먹는 자원이 더 많고 생산 시설, 기반 시설도 오히려 더 많이 돼 있고 그렇기 때문에 현재는 어느 정도 병력을 맞바꿨다라는 생각이 듭니다. 지금은.
자, 임요한 선수가 슬슬 나가 봅니다.
용감해요.
많지 않은 병력인데요.
계속 나가는데요.
자, 저거는
띄엄띄엄.
Yeah, here he comes again with the Vulture Bikes, picking off a few of Much's not SCV's probes.
선수는 벙커를 지어야 됩니다. 벙커.
And now possessing his siege tanks. Boxer has decided to strike now, but does he have enough units? He may have lost too many tanks early on. The tanks, of course, are so pivotal for the Terran push. Now bringing his Vulture Bikes up here, probably will be planting a minefield, but Much directly engaging these siege tanks,
예, 뭐 근데 뭐 사실
thus making it rather difficult to have any sort of successful attack. It appears that Boxer may have wasted too many tanks in general.
마비시킬 수 있는 병력은 절대 아니었습니다. 임요한 선수가 프로브를 좀
Now, Vulture Bike's planting mines, but it looks like Much's army is too sizable. And perhaps that double expo was an unwise decision by Boxer.
자, 벌처. 임요한 선수의 벌처. 기능에서 아주 모습이 좋았는데요.
예, 벌처 드라이빙은
Planting several mines.
그렇죠.
But not enough, as it appears that Much is now gaining some map control, upgrading the air weapons before he even has the carriers.
사이버네틱 스코어가 왜 돌아가나 했는데 캐리어가 준비가 되고 있었군요.
It's going to be an uphill battle for Much. Excuse me, I just lied. I meant it's going to be an uphill battle for Boxer. Even with his macro looking pretty strong, his unit micro has turned out to be rather poor. And because of that, well, it's very difficult to catch up.
거의 못하고 탱크도 많이 잃었기 때문에 예상한다 할지라도 지금 당장 골리앗을 뽑기도 부담스러운 그런 상황이고요. 그래서 지금 벌처
Once the carriers come into play, the Protoss ground army will be even stronger. A map such as Blue Storm has many locations where carriers can abuse the Terran army.
예, 벌처 탱크를 모으면 자원이
Not as bad as Katrina, obviously, but still
갑자기 가스 기군이 오는 타이밍이 오거든요.
not a comfortable place for Terran.
3헤드원에서 탱크 뽑고 있어요. 이러면
Much appears to be moving across towards the Terran turf. Is he going to do some type of attack on this expansion? It's not clear. Boxer has lost so many tanks. Here comes Much now, but Boxer is planting mines all around these siege tanks. And now Vulture Bikes are well, not doing as much damage.
네, 어제 같은 경우는 마인이 참이 마인 역할을 제대로 못하는 그런 느낌이었는데.
Here come two more Vulture Bikes. Excuse me, two to each expansion. And they're going to try to pick off as many probes. But this does not look like it's going to be a very effective harassment since Boxer is not really focusing on his Vulture Bikes. Much seems to be much more focused on taking out or taking care of his probes. A good job of probe babysitting by Much.
정보력에서도 상당히 이제 유효했을 텐데.
지금은 임요한 선수가 벌처로 좀 신을 내고는 있습니다만
It looks like Boxer does not have. Oh, yes, he does. He does have a sizable army here to defend this.
있는데 조금씩 전 전황은 안 좋아지는 그런 상황이
좀 기운이 빠진 거죠?
그런 상황으로 지금 가고 있습니다. 임요한 선수는 아직
It looks like Much is gaining some map control, stopping Boxer's sneaky attempts to sneak Vulture Bikes around. Now taking out taking out this pylon because the very positioning of that pylon accidentally blocks Much off from building his nexus there. That's why Much is doing that, in case you were wondering. That would be the most logical place for Terran to attack now. That is the shortest distance for him to push. Much sitting back and waiting for Boxer to push again because he knows that he has a higher chance of killing off Boxer's push. Much wants to play it safe. Much wants a win under his belt from the Emperor.
돌아가는 모습이 현재까지 안 보였고 골리앗이 일단 한기도 없다는 것은 캐리어를 짐작도 못한다는 거거든요. 이제 맞네요.
자, 타이밍을 잡나요?
네, 사정거리 업그레이드 지금 가죠.
네, 카론 부스터.
네, 이게 캐럿
나가야죠. 안 나가면 뭐
Here come the Vulture Bikes now.
무조건 나가야 되는데 지금도 사실 진출 타이밍이 그렇게 빠른 건 아닙니다.
캐리어가 한 기일 때
Carriers
싸웠어야
still
되는데
being produced.
지금 세 기까지 나와 있으면 탱크 찍으면 금방
Now we're in the Boxer cam.
그리고 다시 벌초.
It looks like he's binding all of his units to different hotkeys. That's an indicator that he is going to push very soon. And here it comes now. Boxer is on the move. But will it be enough to face Much's units? Much will be using zealot bombs. And the carriers are coming in now. Boxer is not prepared for these carriers whatsoever. Much can retract his main ground army and instead just use these carriers to pick off whatever the Emperor has.
한 7개만 쭉 나와주면 어떻게 될지 모르는 건데.
자, 나가면서 골리앗을
And this is an awful place that the Emperor is in right
아직 안 나왔습니다.
예, 찍어놨어야 되는 골리앗들이 현재
With his
나오지
ground
않고
army in the back,
계신가요, 지금?
Boxer is attempting to do something to come back using some Vulture Bike harassment. He will come around planting a minefield. Observers will be there to take that out, though.
저 좁은 입구에 벌처는 참 안타깝네요, 지금 유현 선수 입구에.
Much removes the carriers, attempting to rebuild a few more.
중간에 한번 나가면서 병력적으로 약간은
Here he comes now, taking out this turret.
한번 입구로 들이닥칠 캐리어와 지상 병력 조합을 일단 시간을 벌어냈습니다.
네.
임요한 선수는 지금 여유를 주면 안 되는 상황입니다.
예.
캐리어가
These cannons have set up a wall. That's going to be difficult for vulture bikes to get in there. Much utilizing this ridge over here to pick off SCVs. Boxer has hardly any SCVs. It's going to be very, very tough for him to recover from this. The carrier is able to keep the Emperor matted in his base. He will already have +3 very soon on the carrier weapons, making them formidable opponents to even Goliath.
지금 측정하나요?
그렇죠. 나가면 지금이야. 지금입니다.
자, 임요한 선수 나가는데요.
Here he comes now. Boxer knows it's now or never, and he has to push in, surrounding a few of Much's dragoons. But here comes the rest of Much's army walking into mines, but Much may have out-macroed him anyways. The crowd is cheering for the Emperor. Slayer's Boxer.
현재까지 이곳까지만 나와도 많이 나왔고요.
캐리어는 묶어놨어요.
12시 멀티를 벌처와 소수 골리앗으로
Much has halted his carrier production, perhaps to rebuild a stronger ground army, knowing that Boxer will most likely be making Goliath. And he already has a reasonable amount of carriers as is.
임요한 선수가 준비를
02업이에요, 캐리어.
하지 않을까 싶어요. 11시 쪽.
캐리어 02업, 골리앗은 1, 1업.
Picking up a few more Goliaths is what Much wants to do. And he will be able to do that without too much trouble. Boxer attempting to push forward at this expansion. But Much will be able to utilize this ridge to the best of his advantage. Picking off a few of these siege tanks. And look at the ability for Much to control carriers. He is clearly warmed up in his carrier micro. But it looks like Much may still lose this Nexus. This could be an ample opportunity for Boxer to recover if he can unsiege his tanks in time, and he has picked off the Nexus. It looks like the siege tanks are now being taken out. And man, the carrier control is just too much for Boxer to deal with. He has lost his tanks. He should have unsieged and retreated. That will make the sizable ground army of Much very, very strong.
예, 지금 탱크만 제거했기 때문에 지상 병력을 많이 모아서 한꺼번에 이제 공격을 하겠다는 생각인데 글쎄요, 지금 넥서스를 잃은 거는 어느 정도는 타격을
Here come a few stray Goliaths. Checking to see if in fact the Nexus is rebuilding, and it is.
박영민 선수.
센터에 나오거든요. 조심해야 됩니다.
자, 올라오죠.
골리앗 도망가야 됩니다.
+3 attack on the carriers.
옥저버만 계속 잡으면서 임요한 선수.
자, 이 센터 쪽으로 집결하고 있는. 자,
It looks like Boxer's attempting to edge up again, but oh my god, that is so many units. Much really living up to his name. Able to muster such a large force. He is moving up now, tearing apart whatever forces Boxer has remaining. I don't think Boxer has much more left. And this could be the end. He did pick up a few carriers. But that really doesn't matter because he's just so behind. Here he comes now, Much putting on the killing blows. It looks like the Emperor has been defeated. He has nothing right now. He has been broken down, picked apart by Much strategically and macro management wise. And good game, Boxer has surrendered. GG. Boxer not looking too happy about that game. Much looks a little relieved to have two very long, drawn-out games in a row completed. Stay tuned, everybody. We got more games.
Caution, Free, Iris, Light, Mine, Flash, Jaedong, easy play, anytime, stop, nada, much. Slayer's Boxer, C, Bisu, Savior, 16 of the most powerful StarCraft gamers in the world. LG, Intel Centrino, GOMTV, Star Invitational.
welcome back to the GOMTV StarCraft Invitational. We're in the Group B phase, day 4. Jaedong, Nada, Much, and Slayer's Boxer. All in this group. It's been nicknamed the Group of Death. This has really turned out to be an exciting tournament. Nada in the back with an 0-2, Boxer also in the back with an 0-1, Jaedong with a 1-0, and Much with a 2-0. Much in the most comfortable position, Nada in the lead. Nada can only hope for some type of tie to occur in order for him to somehow come back. We just saw an interesting game previously. We saw Much versus Slayer's Boxer, Much opening up with that proxy gateway. And then Boxer just so happened to wall in, nullifying any aggressive play that Much could have pulled off. Much responds well by expoing and stopping Boxer from getting any type of early intelligence. As the game moves forward, Boxer attempts to double expo while Much double expos, but it just turns out to not be enough because Much managed to pick off so many siege tanks that the Terran push was almost useless when Boxer deemed it fit, and the end result was carriers coming into play, and that slowly withered Boxer's forces away. Now onto this match, Jaedong versus Boxer. Boxer probably trying to shake off that last loss. He has to play very carefully. Now putting on the noise blockers on his ear. Jaedong already up one game, defeating Nada, the most successful pro gamer of all time. Jaedong, the protege of his group, a young, smart, and rather successful pro gamer, ranked 3rd in the Kestra Pro Gaming rankings. Nada was ranked number 1 long ago for a very long period of time, but not anymore.
자, 최근 우리 곰TV 스타 인비테이셔널도 그렇습니다만은 저그 진영의 분위기가 참 좋지 못합니다. 그럼에도 불구하고 저그가 하나다라는 것은
one thing to bear in mind is that the map is Katrina. This is a map where many Zergs 3-hash before even getting their spawning pool because rushes are so unlikely. Because you have an expansion in the back of your base rather than in the front, it's very easy to expand for both races. But can Boxer actually beat the 3rd-ranked Tesla player right now, the highest-ranked Zerg in the world, and what many people are arguing will soon be the number 1 ranked player in the world because he is just trouncing every opponent that he meets.
경기 준비를 하고 있는데 임요한 선수가 이제 그 연습을 하는데 아무래도 공군의 스팀에 있다 보니까 연습 상대가 또 다양하지가 않지 않습니까? 그래서 이제
I'm interested in seeing if Boxer is going to open up with some type of aggressive play early on, or if it's going to be more of a macro game. He seemed to want to go with a macro game, which I think was unwise last game, especially versus a player like Much. Much getting much more time to practice, no pun intended there. And because of that, it's very hard to just outproduce somebody who just plays more often than you do. Looking at the player stats for Much, excuse me, we don't care about him. We are talking about Jaedong. Jaedong versus Terran in a 38-17 record, putting him at 69.1% win ratio. When we take... Oh, it started. And the game has begun. Jaedong located at the north. A Zerg prodigy. Rather new to the scene, if you look at StarCraft in the long run. Young in age, but his mind is fresh with brilliance. And here we see Boxer, the forefather of StarCraft, the one who pretty much learned the game and taught us how to play it today. But has Jaedong surpassed the Emperor? We will find out soon enough.
임요한 선수의 제가 이제
The opening builds will be critical on a map like this.
메카닉으로 임현 선수가 저그를 잘 잡는다고 안준영에서 말할 때 시초라고 말했는데 저 바이오닉으로 잘 잡는다의 시초.
I have seen some Terrans go fast command center.
착각을 하고
The safest fast expand build on a map like this is barracks and command center.
네, 그렇습니다.
바이오닉으로 사실 마린 메딕으로 럴커.
I have seen Jaedong go 3 hatch before, much like Savior.
자, 이재동 선수와
He may be doing this in this case.
이 선수의 모습만 봐도 참 상징하는
No, he will be going for a 9 pool.
그렇죠, 풀.
예.
부드러운입니다, 부드러운.
굉장히 빨리.
Okay, a 9 pool speedling rush. This is a rather uncommon build. In fact, this is probably the least common build, except for maybe, actually, I really can't think of anything that's as uncommon as this. So uncommon because it's a 4-player map. Generally, the 9 pool will not work. Perhaps he's doing the 9 pool because he knows that Slayer's Boxer is well known for his early rush strategies. Maybe he's trying to play cautiously, knowing the Boxer may be desperate and doing some type of strategy to catch up, spotting the command center, but backing off carefully with the Overlord. Boxer is not actually aware that the Zerg already knows where he is. Oh god. Oh god. Okay. He's going for the early command center. StarCraft does not always boil down to luck. But Jaedong appears to have that on his side. The barracks now coming up, and the Lings are already on their way. And oh god, this is just so bad for the Terran. This is just so pivotal. The fact that the Jaedong 9 pulled and that Boxer fast command centered. Boxer did not cheese, but Jaedong was prepared for it, and instead Boxer did exactly what would work against this. Oh god, this is like a bad dream. I don't want to see Boxer lose like this. I almost hope I wake up from this match and find out it was a bad dream and that I slept through my job and now I've been fired, because that would be much less painful than actually watching him lose like this. And the SCVs have been taken out, and there's almost nothing that he could do. Now building, trying to rebuild that supply depot, but the SCVs have been removed. And oh my god, this is so bad. And a hatchery being put down. A humiliating move that Jaedong is shutting Boxer down. The hatchery not completely useless because you can sunk rush if the Terran manages to wall in, but that will not happen because there are so many Zerglings now coming. And good game! Wow. Rather disappointing game from Slayer's Boxer. A rather unfortunate game. It just came down to the 2 different builds. Jaedong expected Boxer to cheese. Boxer did the exact opposite, and because of that, he lost. Stay tuned, everybody. We got some more great games coming.
Caution, Free, Iris, Light, Mine, Flash, Jaedong, easy play, anytime, stop, nada, much. Slayer's Boxer, C, Bisu, Savior, 16 of the most powerful StarCraft gamers in the world. LG, Intel Centrino, GOMTV, Star Invitational.
Welcome back to the GOMTV StarCraft Invitational. This is Group B, Day 4. We're moving on to the 5th game of the series. This is big nicknamed the Group of Death, considering how powerful all of the players in this tournament are. Jaedong up 2-0, much up 2-0, Nada down 0-2, and Slayer's Boxer down 0-2 as well. The upcoming match will be Jaedong versus Much. The 2 players in the lead of the group are going to see who's going to be the more dominant one. Saw an interesting game previously. Probably the shortest game in the tournament so far. Maybe the shortest game in the tournament completely. Boxer opening up with a fast command center on a map like Katrina, because most Zergs don't rush. There's almost no risk of a rush, and doing the fast command center can really reward the Terran later on. On the other hand, Jaedong being very cautious of the fact that Boxer is known for risky builds and aggressive play, opts to go for that early excuse me, opts to go for that early 9 pull, which in the long run, had Boxer gotten a barracks first, could have gotten ahead of Jaedong, even though Jaedong is a macro beast. But it just didn't work out that way. Not only did Jaedong 9 pull, he managed to scout Boxer with the first Overlord, and because of that, he just managed to get completely ahead. So it's just like bummer, dude.
이영호 선수와
Alright, but on to this game.
경기가 성사가 될 수도 있겠네요.
This is Jaedong versus Much. They're both 2-0 in their group. They're both monsters of their own race. Jaedong ranked 3rd. I'm about to pull up my stats for Much so I can discuss him.
그 결과를 낳은 적이 있었는데 그거에 대한 또 이영호 선수 입장에서는
let me talk about Jaedong. Jaedong versus Protoss. This is in fact his weakest matchup. 21 and 17. 55.3% win ratio. That's much worse than his 80% win ratio versus Zerg, or his 69.1, almost a 70% win ratio versus Terran. Taking a look at Much's record versus Zerg is a 25 and 22 all-time professional record. 53.2%. So when looking at the two percentages, although Jaedong, his worst matchup is versus Protoss, still has a higher win percentage versus Protoss than Jaedong has a win percentage versus Zerg, but still very close. Could be a very even game. The map will be Bekmagoji, possibly the most obscure map in StarCraft history, with the most unusual features put on it. Requires a totally different mindset to play. Bekmagoji, Much's overall record on this map is 6-3. Versus Zerg, he is 0-1 on this map. Taking a look at Jaedong's overall records on Bekmagoji, he has not actually played this map yet. That may have some negative impacts on Jaedong's performance, but who knows, this is Jaedong. He's a monster. I saw him taking shots of nerd blood backstage before the game even started. He may be able to pull something off anyways. A lot of people claim this map is very difficult to play on. I've played on it only a few times, and I find it rather challenging considering it has double the amount of SB and gas geysers and double the amount of minerals that you start out with. That makes it just so different. And I believe we're starting soon.
네, 전장 백마고지입니다. 7시에 위치한 저그.
The game has begun. The two proven strongest players in the group. Jaedong at the bottom left. Taking a look at the top right, we see Much.
네, 시작 전에 박영민 선수가 조금 재밌는 채팅을 했었는데요.
Jaedong having a slightly easier time in this tournament, Much playing into very long, drawn-out games, which to some extent he may have hoped to end very early because of his aggressive rush strategies. It's proven that he can be a formidable opponent in the late game.
자, 백마고지에서 저그와 프로토스 어떻습니까?
백마고지에서 저그와 프로토스, 글쎄요. 지금 프로토스가
the winner of this group will be facing anytime.
많은 자원을 확보를 하고
That'll be very difficult.
요즘은 안 되겠네.
Because anytime is very good.
네. 이거 감정이입해서 읽어주네요. 네. 손잡고 사인해주고 안아주고. 예.
Pylon put at the entrance to Much's base.
백마고지에서 이제 저그가 프로토스가 자원을 많이 먹는다는 측면에서 보면은
going to go for either an early forge or an early gateway.
그것이 프로토스는 항상 선택의 종족이었고
gateway it is.
저그에게 정찰을 당한 상태에서
Now note that this map has neutral sunken colonies on it, so if you've not seen this map before, don't be confused. The neutral sunken colonies are there so that Terran And Protoss have to kill off the neutral sunken colonies if they want to build in the locations that they desire. This lets Zerg set up that third hatch and get a little bit of an advantage. Not an imbalanced advantage, just an advantage. And yes, this is not BGH. This is Bekmagoji, even though the minerals make it look like it is BGH.
네, 그리고 또 하나 변수가 될 수 있는 것이 박영민 선수는 이 맵에서 1패라고는 하지만 조용건
Here comes the scouting probe.
네.
경험이 있다는 게 프로리그를 위해 연습을 했다는 게 중요하고 이재동 선수는
Stopping that spawning pool from getting built.
스포닝 풀.
A good technique that a lot of top players use is if they see that the probe is blocking the spawning pool from being made or the hatchery, they just make two of the same building, knowing that only one will be allowed to produce. That way the probe cannot be everywhere at once.
예, 관건입니다.
네, 그렇습니다. 사실
The spawning pool starts.
맵에 대한 대비 그리고 맵에 대한 준비 이런
Carefully positioning all of his overlords around the map.
차이가 나게
Jaedong will use these to very
지금처럼
to watch
하루에 3경기 4경기
exactly what his opponent's doing. Here comes much as Zealot now. The distance on the map is rather long.
이런 상황이라면은
Here we see much once again using this probe to harass the drone, which could be used to, and he does it once again. Nice opening by Much.
박영민 선수.
Really showing that he's got good micro.
또 한 개의 드론이 나왔는데요.
And it looks like, once again, telling two drones to mine, or to start a hatchery, so that at least one can make it up. Here comes the Zealot now. It looks like he is going to go in for the move. This was not a feint to force him to make Zerglings. Zerg will have 6 Zerglings. Much must make sure that he can recover from this. Here he comes now. He's going to try to take out some drones. Every drone counts for the Zerg early on. He is trying very hard to surround. Oh, and he does manage to get one drone. But one drone is not worthwhile. The Zealot costs 100 minerals. The drone only costs 50.
원게이트 플레이 비슷하게 진행을 하는 동시에 입구에는
Cybernetics 4 now produced.
이렇게 방어가 가능한 맵이거든요. 일단은 박용민 선수 출발 괜찮습니다.
And Zerglings on the
양 선수
move.
모두 무난하게 현재 출발을 하고 있는 거고요. 그 프로토스 입장에서 이곳에서 박영민 선수는 빠르게 스타게이트를 건설을 해서 상대방 체제를 정찰을 하면서 커세어로 상대방 오버로드 하나 둘씩 내쫓고 다크템플러로 또 멀티 다크템플러를 이용해서 오버로드 없을 때 멀티를 이런 식의 전략을 생각을 해볼 수가 있습니다.
Citadel for the Protoss rather than a starport. That means he will have less intelligence about what his opponent is doing, and that's why he wants to keep the scouting probe alive. Jaedong knows that, although he doesn't know his opponent's not getting the Corsair yet. Jaedong has to be very careful to keep it alive. Or Much does. Now picking up that creep colony at the bottom right, knowing that the Zerglings are too preoccupied, trying to take out Much's scouting probe. He now makes the cannon there. Getting his second Vespian gas geyser, he has also done. That will help him get a sizable amount of Archons. Or Templars. Even though Templars morph into Archons or Dark Templars. Gas is a crucial resource for Protoss versus Zerg. It's a resource that you really cannot afford to avoid. It gives you all the units that you require to defeat a Zerg mid-game and late-game. That's why many Protostants hate playing against Zerg on maps where they only have a Mineral Expo. Even though the initial Expo on this map is a Mineral Expo, it doesn't really matter because you already start out with 2 gas geysers.
지금이 그때예요. 지금 프로토스는 이미 미네랄이 거쳐졌는데 저기는 아직 안 그렇거든요. 저기도 조금 남았네요. 조금 거의 다 거쳐졌고.
자, 스파이어도 건설하고 있는
The Spire is up.
자, 박영민 선수의 병력
Jaedong's Mutalisks are very strong. Here comes Much now, possibly going to use that Spire to try to, possibly going to use this to try to force his opponent to morph a second colony, maybe make some more Zerglings rather than Hydralisks. Or waste some more larvae, anything he can do to force his opponent to get behind. Templar Archives now completing either 2 High Templars, which will be used for an Archon, 2 High Templars, which will be used for Psionic Storm, maybe a High Templar and DT, maybe even 2 DTs. And a map like Bekmagoji is very difficult to play on. There's a lot of it's a lot of circular movement on the map, so there's really no moment where you're completely and entirely cornered.
박영민 선수는
That makes scouting a lot easier and a lot harder to stop. Makes counterattacks very viable. Here Jaedong comes.
자, 공격력 업그레이드가
And it looks like he's going to block this entrance off with the Dragoon.
네.
2 DTs.
자, 템플러가 나왔다는
DT
거,
High Templar opening.
것을 이제 확인을 했습니다.
다크템플러가 굉장히 중요한 역할을 하죠. 사실
네.
오버로드의 스피드 업그레이드가 되기
Mutalisks
전에
are on the way.
다크템플러가 뭐 본진까지
The
들어가면은
Dark Templars will be rather weak rather weak
그런
once the
역할을
Zerg gets
하게
map
되는
control,
거고.
but it looks like
그것이
he's
불가능하다
going to have a Dark
할지라도
Templar out here now. Now is the time to do it. He wants to make sure that Zerg doesn't get any other expansions up early on.
히드라리스크를 봤는데
예, 그러니까 히드라리스크를 봤으니까 지금 못할 생각을 못 하고
Jaedong
있는데
waits until he has 9 Mutalisks.
그런데
almost
자, 지금
nine.
이제 포통 캐롤을 건설하고 있는
Before his harassment will start, here we see much as Dark Templar maybe going to try to sneak in, but backs off when he realizes it's not a possibility.
그거밖에 없어 보이거든요. 이거 어떻게
Each Dark Templar is quite precious. You cannot afford to lose it.
이쪽 멀티는 아예 없고요.
And it looks like Jaedong will pick off this one Dragoon. Maybe going to move in here to pick off the High Templar, muta-jabbing his opponent.
두 개 가지고는 안 될 텐데.
He is flying through here, picking off all these cannons. If he can pick off this cannon, the Archon will be very useless in holding off the Mutalisks, especially because the Mutalisks are so agile. Picking off probes instead and playing it safe. Had Jaedong gone to the bottom right, he would have taken out that Nexus with ease, but instead he went for the main.
예, 경기 펼칠 것 같네요.
이 제동머리짜리도
그렇죠. 이곳에 추가 멀티하죠.
네.
자원이 없었나 봐요.
예, 그러네요.
빌려다 말았어요, 방금. 잠깐.
Notice Jaedong is macroing very well right now. We can tell because he barely was able to make that hatchery. Here comes the Mutalisk now. Being a little risky with his Mutalisks.
그래도 황급히 수비한 것 치고는 굉장히 성공적으로 현재 박영민 선수가
You never want to get too close to an Archon. The Archon does too much splash damage for it to be worthwhile. Even though the Mutalisk slightly outranges the Archon, and I have seen pros who can actually pick off. Okay, careful.
이번 멀티 확인했습니다, 박영민.
He says,
제가 보기엔 이쪽 계속 노릴 수 있거든요.
even though you can pick off a Archon early on with excellent Mutalisk micro, it's just not worth it because the Archon can deal so much damage, softening up your entire Mutalisk army.
여타 활용도가 높았던 히드라리스크 지금 럭커로 변태를 하고 있는 상황입니다.
아, 예.
지금 뽑아내고 있네요.
Oh, and here he comes now.
조심해야 됩니다.
Storming those Mutalisks, which have already been softened up by an Archon punch, morphing those Templars now. The Archon presence on the map must be intimidating to Jaedong, who will now most likely be switching over to Lurkers, Hydralisks, and Zerglings.
로보틱스 있긴 있나요?
Sloppily flying his Mutalisks over. What are you doing, Jaedong?
히드라리스크는 잃었고요. 자, 이제 럭커가 기다리고 있는 상황.
예.
Much will have to pull back. He has not gotten his robotic spay yet. There it is now.
짓고 있는 상황이고 박영민 선수는
He is instead going to attempt to get an expansion up early on.
아마도 드래곤을 좀 섞어주지 않을까 생각이 듭니다.
At the top. Right. Here comes Much going to run by, hoping that he can maybe get in here and do some damage, but instead he can't. Now pinned in between some Lurkers, fortunately managing to avoid them. He's going to have to be very careful though. And he was. Now here we see that Jaedong is attempting to secure another expansion, but it is going to be very difficult. He may use the splash damage Archon trick to pick this last one off, and yes, he does! Yes, you can use splash damage to pick off Archons which are burrowed underground. He's now going to just ignore the Lurker and attempt to go for that hatchery. If he can get the hatchery, which just completed, it will put Jaedong back by a lot. And the hatchery goes down. Much knows to retreat. The Nexus is still building. If Jaedong can respond in time with Lurkers, he will pick his opponent off. Or at least the expansion off.
그게 프로토스의 약점인데 절대 놓치지 않는 박영민 선수 굉장히 좋아요. 너무 좋아요.
이재동 선수의 방어 타임이라는 것을 참.
Here they come now. He has actually driven him back, though. He should have burrowed, but perhaps Jaedong assumes that Much has observers by now.
오버로드 스피드업까지 돼 있고 하이브가
And he will very soon.
않은 상황인 걸로 봐서
Both players playing just a little sloppy this game. Perhaps burnt out from all the games they've had to play so far.
드랍도 노려볼 수 있고 하이브가 저그가 프로토스 상대로 하이브가 빨리 가게 되면 되면은 저글링의 효율이 굉장히 좋아집니다. 그렇기
네.
때문에 하이브를 빨리
A lot of
가서
drones in that
저글링을
expansion.
폭발적으로 생산하는 것도 프로토스전에 좋은
I would say much drones, but that would be an insult to our Protoss plane.
박용민의 전매 특허 드라군 아칸 조합 이것은
Looks like he's just now got the +2 attack upgrade.
조합이거든요.
네.
저거를 깨려면 파이브의 아드레날린 그랜지 저글링도 좋지만
네.
Looking at the Zerglings, they do not even have the +1 to their carapace. That is bad news
저글링 업그레이드는 아직 안 됐어요.
for Zerg. That means the Protoss army will be very strong,
그래도 이 전장 상태가
particularly against the Zerglings, but also against the Lurkers. Here he comes now. Jaedong's attempt to contain was rather piss poor, and he will have to. Well, he has not even managed to retract his army and save it.
자, 취소.
This is bad news for Jaedong.
예, 뭐 비록 손해는
Too many
있지만
blunders by this brilliant player.
그래도
그런데
아니,
여기는
이거는
경력이 많지 않고
6시가 위험해요. 지금
자,
공
이겨.
위험이거든요.
아, 예. 여기다 한 질러 두 마리
And this expansion isn't even covered. Here comes much now.
예. 이쪽 멀티부터 상대방 동선이면 이쪽 멀티부터 판단하고
He's about to take this out. Jaedong will try to use these Hydralisks, but to no avail.
프로토스는 생산 기반이 모두 돼 있는 상태에서 조합이
Storming all of the Hydras in the way. Much's army is far too big now. He's become a bit sloppy with his
예, 그렇죠. 성큰 안 뚫리면 뚫려요.
decision-making ability, I guess I would say.
성큰 지어도 뚫릴 것 같은데.
Using the Dragoons to pick off the Scourge. Much is closing in, and it may be game very soon. The leg upgrade is finished for the Zealots, and Much, if he loses his expansion, will more than likely leave the game.
이재동 선수 템플러 살아남아 있고 아코 살아남아 있고
승윤 셰퍼의 위력이 재확인되기도 전에 그냥 박영 선수 몰아치기가
공이업이 돼 있군요. 공이요.
Oh man, this is just bad news for Jaedong. I think Jaedong is, I would say 80% chance of losing this, if not 90%. And GG, Jaedong has failed. Much has succeeded in 3-0ing his entire group. Jaedong probably a bit disappointed with himself. Too many blunders from someone of his caliber, I should say. But this tournament has turned out to be very exciting. Stay tuned, everybody. We got more games coming up here at the...
Washin, Free, Iris, Light, Mine, Flash, Jaedong, easy play, anytime, stop, nada, much, Slayer's Boxer, C, Bisu, Savior, 16 of the most powerful StarCraft gamers in the world, LG, Intel Centrino, GOMTV, Star Invitational.
Welcome back to the GOMTV StarCraft Invitational. This is Nick Tasteless Plot broadcasting to you from Seoul, Korea. We have had an amazing day so far. This is the final round. The two who will be making it out of the group, Much with a 3-0, Jaedong with a 2-1. Nada and Slayer's Boxer are tied at the end of the group, both not winning any games yet. However, they are about to face each other now. Two legends of different StarCraft eras about to face each other. Nada has had a 3-game winning streak previously against Slayer's Boxer, although Boxer's overall record of all time against Nada, Boxer is in favor of that. So the question is, can Boxer use that overall record to his advantage and smash Nada, or will Nada remain consistent and beat Boxer for the 4th time in a row? We saw an interesting game previously. In Game 5, it was Jaedong versus Much on Bekmagoji, which will be the same map we will be watching today. A one-on-one map. Funky map at that. It just looked like Jaedong was very poor with his Mutalisk Micro. Very sloppy, to say the least. It was easily the sloppiest game anybody had played in this group so far. He threw away so many Mutalisks, then had a poor contain in which he didn't pull out of quick enough, and then followed that up with overextending himself again after losing his initial hatchery. So it was pretty much an easy game for Much. He just had to follow the playbook to beat him there. Some people on the forums are actually claiming that maybe Jaedong threw his game so he wouldn't have to face any time in his group. It's certainly possible. Pro gamers do throw games in tournaments all the time, although it's very difficult to prove. I know we had some of that going on in the World Cyber Games the most recent one, the 2007 one in Seattle, the World Finals, with Stork going Nexus on 14, Protoss versus Protoss against White Raw, which is pretty much the most illogical build you could possibly do. Doesn't mean we can necessarily prove it, but an easy way to stop people from throwing matches, and I'm not saying that Jaedong absolutely did this, but would be to not show where the games are being seeded. Might be a bit anticlimactic, but it would at least keep players playing at their hardest in moments like this. Now on to the match we're about to see, Nada versus Boxer. Nada, the most accomplished pro gamer of all time. He has won 3 OSLs and is just he's a very consistent player. All of his matchups are very close to the same win percentile. Terran vs. Terran's good, Terran vs. Protoss is good, Terran versus Zerg is good. Will his Terran versus Terran be good enough to defeat the Emperor? Meanwhile, we have Boxer, who pretty much taught everybody I guess you should say, how much he's actually done with micro. His ability to micro units really revolutionized the game, really made people realize how strong unit control can be. He's also the forefather of StarCraft strategy. He's really taught so many people how to just, utilize interesting situations. Most of his games, he's outthought his opponents, simply out-strategized them. I can't wait for the game to start. There I am, shoutcasting the game, but if I remember right, I was sitting on my headphones and couldn't quite look up. These are all recordings that we're watching here. I was redoing these games for GOMTV because it turned out the sound quality wasn't quite good enough for everybody that was going to be watching, and GOM wanted to deliver the best possible coverage of these events to the English-speaking audience, and for that reason has chosen to redo these. I am happy to do them though, and I will be casting them as if they are live, so we don't lose any momentum. So many fans down there for Im Yohan. Voted at 50 or over 50%, most likely to win the tournament on the Korean GOM polls. But it's turned out that he will not make it out of the group. At this point in time, the two players will fight for notoriety. Nada on the left, Boxer on the right. Two very popular players, both very charming. I was actually talking to Boxer in between one of the games, and he made a joke about Blue Storm being so imbalanced for Zerg, it should be called Zerg Storm. Really funny guy. Nada also a charming fellow. The games will be starting soon.
자, 경기 준비는 조금 전에 이제
Until then, we sit and wait. Bekma Goji.
잠깐 조금 더
A map neither players have had too much experience
자, 이윤현
on.
선수와 임요환 선수의 이제 마지막 경기의 의미에 대해서 이제 몇 번 이제 계속 거듭해서
We're waiting for both of the players to say go so we can start the game.
내일 있을 경기 16강
Until then, I patiently follow the Koreans commentators and try to figure out when on earth this game will actually start without sounding like a dumbass.
선수가 포진했는 이 C조. 이 경기도 굉장히 재밌겠는데요.
그렇습니다. 프로토스 2명의 강자.
Now, on a map like this, on a map like Bekma Goji, there are a lot of interesting options because it is a one-on-one map. There are a lot of interesting tech patterns that you can follow because of the abundance of minerals as well as the double Vespi and gas geysers. So we could see this game going in a lot of different directions. Boxer versus Nada. Who will win? Will Tasis run out of things to say? It looks like it.
Knock 'em down, knock 'em down, shut 'em down, shut 'em down, knock 'em down, knock 'em down, shut 'em down, come on, shut 'em
자, 경기 시작됐습니다.
Welcome back.
선수의 진영부터 확인해 보죠. 백마고제 7시 쪽에 위치해 있는
at the south
테란입니다.
is a brown Nada. Through the process of elimination, we know that at the north is a red Slayer's boxer.
붉은색 테란입니다.
On a map like Bekmagoji, players must be very careful to send their SCVs to the correct mineral patches in the correct order. Note that some mineral patches have hardly any minerals, while others have quite a bit. Making sure that your SCVs mine those small numbers of minerals soon is good because it opens up access to minerals in the bag.
경기를 기억하고 있는 임요한 선수라면 일단 마음은 산뜻하게 출발할 수 있을 것 같아요.
첫 승의 재물이 이윤열.
Again, cheese strategies, very likely on maps like this. Mostly because it's a one-on-one map, so you're able to find your opponent very easily. You're able to guess where he is. Well, you're not, excuse me, I shouldn't even use the word guess. It's almost belittling. You know where your opponent is. Supply depot at the entrance for the Emperor. And Nada puts his supply depot near the mineral patch to force faster mining. One depot there to cut off his opponent's intelligence. The other depot placed to boost his economy. Two different paths from two different players. Didn't quite roll off the tongue. Should have started.
임요한 선수고 백마고지에서 임요한 선수는 테란전 2승에
It looks like he is also going to be getting that barracks nearby the command center so he can return his SCV back to minerals or Vespian gas sooner rather than later. And it looks like he will now put his 3 SCVs inside the refinery to get a factory. I see Nada, excuse me, I don't see much because those people are heading to bases, but it looks like, okay, what, the SCV stopped, not because Boxer is sloppy, but because Boxer is up to something. And down a factory goes. It could be a very quick game. Boxer, utilizing the fact that he knows where his opponent is, puts a factory in the spot that Nada is least likely to cross while scouting.
힘을 줄 수 있는 전략적인 플레이. 전략적인 플레이로 상대방을 당황스럽게 한 후에 자신의 그런 소수 유닛.
Here comes another SCV, perhaps to scout himself, or perhaps to put another factory down. It looks like if he was going to use that to scout, he would have gone down the middle.
이윤열 선수 어느 정도 그 전략적인 플레이를 예상할 수 있지 않을까 싶기도 한데 말이에요.
Now putting, what is he going to do with that? Maybe a starport.
그냥 정석적으로 플레이해서 상대방의 공격을 막아내고.
Note that Boxer's factory is going to get up a little bit sooner.
그렇죠. 아주 단단한 것을 이제.
That means he did sacrifice a few SCVs. Another factory coming down.
4벌초, 5벌초쯤에 타이머시. 굉장히 무서워.
Nada cannot get inside. He has no idea what's about to happen in a fast command center build, which may hurt Nada very much so, especially if he gets an add-on to the factory, which means that the vulture bikes will do that much more damage, that much more quickly. Nada has already lifted off his barracks, is not playing in a defensive way at all, but seems to be comfortable against a player who is known for doing aggressive and aggressive all-in tactics. Here come the factories now building. The vulture bike is inside. The SCV is there to repair.
상대방 벌써 느려요 나오는 게.
빛나던 이 벌써 컨트롤
He will be able to drive back this SCV. And man, this is not good for Nada. Nada is losing too many SCVs. Not enough time to lose them. He will now, if Boxer can muster up a few more vulture bikes, he will be able to easily just pick off the vultures themselves. But as we all know, an SCV dies in 3 hits to a vulture. 3 vultures in the game now means they can pick off SCVs like it's nothing. Here comes a 4th one. SCVs repairing the vulture bikes. Boxer is in awful shape right now as more and more vultures come into the game. And it looks like this may be GG very soon, as Nada can do nothing about the vulture bikes that continue to come, and Boxer will, with about 95% chance, be winning this within the next 2 minutes. Here he is now, picking off so many units, and even the vulture bikes can't stand. And I hope this game is over because I am losing my voice. GG! Wow. Really impressive game by both of those players. Not so impressive by Nada, but only because he did not prepare for such a rush. Bucks are probably happy that he won at least one game in this group of death. Nada probably wishing he played with a bit more caution. The games are done today. Thanks everybody for watching. This is Nick Case's Plot signing out from the GOMTV Invitational.